Yes.
Do you want to turn it on?
Good evening. I would like to call to order the City of Delray Beach Planning and Zoning Board for Tuesday, September 26, 2003. Let the record show it is 5:03 p.m. Ms. Miller, would you please call the roll?
Julian Blankenship.
Here.
I would like to call to order
Who's got this?
City of Delray Beach Planning and Zoning Board for Tuesday, September 26. That could get annoying.
Yeah. Be a ghost. Got a ghost.
Please call the roll.
Do over.
So,
I feel like I'm on radio. There's like that, 12-second delay?
It's an old house.
There was an echo on our end, that's why we're pausing.
you're still on.
For anybody online who's wondering.
Is that the delay in case of bad language?
No,
No.
it's delay because of YouTube
It's an old
probably.
house. Take it down. Yeah, it faced first. It faced first. No, the restaurant's on Federal. That was Anthony's. Anthony's is right down here. Who was in there before? I don't know. Do you want to do over then? Okay, you're going to start over.
Start over. Fine. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So, Ms. Miller, if you could please call the roll.
Julian Blankenship.
Here.
Christina Morrison.
Here.
Chris Brown.
Here.
Gregory Snyder.
Here.
Alan Zeller.
Here.
Chris Davy.
Here. I will ask my colleagues to review the agenda and mention that I would like, if possible, to reorder the agenda to make item 8C, item 8A1. So it would be heard after 8A and before 8B. And I look to my colleagues, does anybody have any other changes or any objection to that proposed change?
Why would we approve the alley before we approve the plat? B and C are related, aren't they? Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake. My mistake.
No, they're not.
When's the
My
legislative
mistake.
item?
My
C
mistake.
is just a plat.
I am so sorry.
No problem.
Move
You
to,
had me there for a second, though.
move to approve
test
the
for today.
agenda as amended.
Sorry, we're going to review the plat early, and then we're going to wait to the end and do the alley?
Ally's a legislative item.
Item
Okay.
Legislative item. Great.
That's what you want.
Motion by Ms. Blankenship, second by,
Second.
excuse me. Excuse me. Second by Glenn. I just forget your last name. Excuse me.
Greg.
Snyder.
Snyder, yes. Excuse me, thank you. Mr. Snyder. Ms. Miller, if you call the roll, please.
Julian Blankenship.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Alan Zeller.
Yes.
Chris Davy.
Yes.
And Chair, Chair and Ms. Miller, Ms. Howell is still technically a board member because of the extension. So to be consistent with past practices, can we just call her as part of the roll as absent, and just for the record, note that she has been absent and is still absent.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Thank you. I should also be announcing that item passed 6-0. We can then move on to the minutes of the August 21st, 2023 meeting. Have my colleagues all had an opportunity to review that? And do they have any amendments to those minutes?
Yes, motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Morrison, second by Ms. Blankenship. Ms. Miller, if you call the roll, please.
Julie Blankenship.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Alan Zeller.
Yes.
Joy Hall absent. Chris Davy.
Yes, let the record show the minutes were approved 6-0. I will now ask members of the public who wish to speak to the board tonight or applicants who are coming before the board to please rise and be sworn by our board secretary.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Great, thank you.
He doesn't have.
I will now ask the members of the public, does any person here wish to come up and speak about an issue which is not on our agenda this evening? I repeat, any issue that is not on our agenda this evening, now is the time where you can come to the podium and speak for 3 minutes. Seeing no one rising, public comment is now closed. We can now move into item 8A after I read the quasi-judicial rules into the record. This hearing shall be conducted in accordance with the City of Delray Beach quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall be permitted to present their case. The public shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each, or a maximum of 6 minutes, if the person represents an organization or a group of people who are present but agree not to speak. The board members, staff, and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine a witness. The city or the applicant will be allowed to offer rebuttal testimony. The decision to approve or deny an application or appeal may not legally be made upon personal views as to whether a project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the number of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions must be made on the basis of whether the project meets the requirements of law, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regulations. And with that being said, we can move right into item number 8A, and I would ask Ms. Rosenberg if she could read that item into the record.
All right, good evening, Board. Alexis Rosenberg, Senior Planner. For the record, I'd like to enter in city case file numbers 2023-170, 2023-171, 2023-69, and 2023-72, which is a voluntary annexation, land use map amendment, rezoning, and LDR text amendment for the property at 5185 Atlantic Avenue. And we're here with Bradley Miller from Urban Design Studio and Neil Schiller from Government Law Group, who are the agents for the application.
Thank you so much. Mr. Schiller.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for hearing us early tonight. Neil Schiller with Government Law Group. I'm here tonight representing the applicant. First, I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year for those that celebrate. Secondly, I want to just introduce my clients at the back of the room, Pierre and Richard Rochemont. I'll let you decide who the father and who the son is, because it's really hard. I love those guys. And lastly, I'm really proud to introduce Bradley Miller from Urban Design Studios, who is going to make, he and his team going to make the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Neil, and good evening. My name is Bradley Miller with Miller. I still slip on that, sorry. 23 years of my own company, Urban Design Studio. And I'm here along with Sandy McGrew, who did all the hard work on this project as part of Urban Design Studio, and Ravali, who is with WGI, who's our traffic engineer, should there be some traffic engineering questions that come up. Is there a... does the mouse work? Ms. Hayden. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we're here tonight to talk about a property. It's a little bit less than 5 acres. That's out in the western area of Delray Beach. Actually, it's within Palm Beach County under their jurisdiction right now. So this whole conglomerate of items that are before you tonight include annexing that property and bringing it into the city of Delray Beach. It's at the northwest corner of the intersection of West Atlantic and Military Trail, behind the marketplace of Delray Shopping Center. Currently has no development on it at all. Zooming in a little closer to see it, there's some other projects around it. The fountains at Delray Beach is there to the northeast, and then to the west is Delray Flea Market, High Point West, and High Point West is actually above the Lakeward Drainage District Canal. The wider area on the right side of the screen is actually showing the boundaries of where Delray, the boundaries of Delray is now, and I didn't do that. Hi, my name's Bradley Miller.
Chair, while they're getting the presentation back up.
Parte.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
It's there. It's there.
Thank you. Let me just interrupt you, Mr.
Sure.
Miller. I figured turn to my colleagues. Ex parte communication on this item? Any?
Yeah, I talked with Mr. Bennett and Mr. Schiller.
I have not. I've talked to no one, Mr. Chairman.
None for me.
Yeah, I visited the site and I talked to Mr. Schiller.
I visited the site, spent a lot of time traipsing around there, so I'm familiar with it.
I visited the site and spoke to Mr. Schiller as well. Sorry, Mr. Miller, the
That's
floor
okay.
is yours.
Interesting property, right? There might be some reason that it's in an undeveloped situation now. So we're hoping to, with what we're proposing here, help that change. So the wider areas on the right side of the screen are the boundaries of Delray. We're right at a corner notch of that. The property I'll show you here in a little bit, the property is actually on the City of Delray annexation maps. Delray Beach technically is already providing services to this property, so why not bring it into the city? So there's 4 items that we're presenting to you tonight. The first is a text amendment that creates an overlay district for the flow, which our clients have proudly named their project in this area, this overlay area. And what that overlay would do is allow some higher densities and some opportunities for workforce housing similar to some other areas that have happened on the eastern sides of Delray. The annexation I've already touched on, coming from Palm Beach County into the city of Delray Beach. And then with that, we would apply the land use and the zoning to the property that corresponds with the city of Delray Beach. So we would be going from the county's designation of residential high, which is a 8 unit per acre density, and we would be, the land use would be medium density. Rezoning wise, the property is agricultural residential right now in the county, and we would be going to a medium density residential density for the zoning district itself. The text amendment is involved, but we've tried to simplify it here just with color. The black text on here is actually what's in the code today and is currently existing. So the red are the changes that we are proposing for this amendment to add the Flow Delray Overlay District. So you can see here, this is just in number 3, it's listing out some of the other areas. This is adding the Flow Delray Overlay District to section 4.4.6 of the code. Likewise, as you carry on, it's again just recognizing this overlay district in number 1. And then at the bottom of the screen for special regulations, this is where it's indicating that the flow overlay district would be allowed up to 24 dwelling units per acre, subject to compliance with Article 4.7. The rest of this, Section 4.5 is really just a description, a legal description that identifies exactly where the property is. And then 4.7 is indicating that it's, again, where it's bounded by the marketplace of Del Rey on the south and then the other communities to the west. So those two are really just locational to identify where the property physically exists. This is the most important slide for the amendment. This is the 4.7 criteria that was mentioned earlier for the density. And out of the 24 dwelling units per acre, the proposal here is to provide a minimum of 20% of those residential units as workforce housing units. They need to be affordable to the moderate income level of the families. There's performance standards that we'll need to comply with as we continue on with the rest of the process here with the city. And then once we get into Section 3 here, it talks about how these how the units are spread out amongst the different unit types with efficiencies: 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and 4 bedroom. I'm going to start from the bottom and then go back. 3 and 4 bedroom, we're not proposing any workforce housing units to be in those. So the workforce component will be within the efficiency 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. Right now, the city's code does not allow for efficiency units to be a workforce unit. We're proposing this to come in this way, which is being driven by market demand. We're finding that out in the market with workforce, with all the increase of inflation that we all hear about every night on the news, the efficiency units are something that's a desirable product type, and we feel would be a good addition to this. We also understand there's another community. Is it Linton? Linton Community? Commons. Thank you. That's suggesting the same thing. I think we're a little bit ahead of them in the process, but they're hearing the same thing. The 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom units are based on a proportionate share. So we're going to have to end up with an equal number of workforce housing units that are 1 bedroom as we have for 2 bedrooms and vice versa. So those balance out after we put all the mix together. And so the workforce units themselves would be encompassed amongst the efficiencies in 1 bedroom and the 2 bedroom units, which we're finding that's the workforce demand that's out in the market today. Working with the city's great staff, Rebecca's been wonderful through this whole process. When we were putting this together, I teased Sandy and I said, we need to put each one of those policies into the presentation and see if we can just bore them out of the room as I go through them. So I took that out. That was just a joke, but these are the lists of policies and goals that we've looked at, that your staff has looked at, and found that all of these modifications that we're proposing are consistent with those goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. What this exhibit is showing is the areas of redevelopment and neighborhood development plans where there are already provisions in the code that allow for these increased densities to help the workforce housing situation. The blue box that's on the left-hand side of the screen is our location, and you can see that all the rest of them, I think there's 5 of them other than ours, are scattered around, but they start right at Congress Avenue and are to the east. There's really nothing to the west to provide for these workforce housing opportunities. Even in the county level, we're not finding that. Our clients astutely identified that and feel like this is filling a need to help out and provide that opportunity for residents in this neighborhood. So this map would be amended to add the flow overlay district to the map for this western area. Likewise, this is the annexation map that does show where our property is generally located. The orange area that's just to the right of where it says the Flow Del Rey is High Point, and actually High Point is part of the annexation map as well. They're still in the county, but they are part of it. So this is just showing how the property is already anticipated and expected really to come into the county, or into the city, I'm sorry. This is a little more detailed, down to a survey of how this site is situated relative to the annexation map of the city. And then back to the land use and zoning. This is going from the Palm Beach County HR8 land use designation to medium density for the city of Delray. And then likewise for rezoning, going from AR, the agricultural residential, to the medium residential zoning district of the city, which is a standard practice when you're annexing property into a city. There are some standards here for rezoning. The requirement is to meet 2 out of the 3. Number 2 is a change of circumstance situation, which is pretty obvious with the annexation itself. We can't leave the zoning category in the county's designation. It needs to be changed to come into the city. And then number 3 is a similar situation with the land use of applying the MD land use designation. So those boxes are checked for the rezoning standards. There are also these 5, which actually, if you look closely in the middle column, there's 3 of them that don't even apply to us, to the rezoning standards. So the first one, standard A, is this the most restrictive? Well, the medium residential zoning district that we're proposing here is actually already been identified through the annexation process. And it's compatible with the surrounding zoning and land use. And then you go to item D, and that is, again, a compatibility issue of what the rezoning is relative to the surrounding properties. So to our southeast is the Marketplace Shopping Center. So that's a commercial development. I should point out that that is actually part of what's called Four Corners, which is another overlay district that's embedded into the city's code. And that property is allowed to have a density up to 30 units per acre as a residential component should it come in for redevelopment. Access. Some of you have went to visit the site. Congratulations for finding it. It is a little bit of a challenge because of how it's located back behind the shopping center, and there is a stoplight there on Atlantic Avenue, and then access comes off at Atlantic and comes directly up. The light gray kind of upside down L shape is the legal access that's for the property. It's an easement that's been granted by the owners of the shopping center since 1981. So that access point has been there. The double red arrow is actually where that easement physically then connects to the property. We've spoken with them, with the adjacent shopping center folks, and felt like it's a better project to have the access on the southwest corner instead of the southeast corner where you're actually behind the shopping center. And they were amenable to giving us a modified easement that would let us have the access so it comes directly into the property. At the southeast corner, the way our intentions here and plans as we're moving forward is to have an emergency access only access point at that southeast. So if for some reason there needs to be further circulation around the project, we would do that. The access itself is, the easement is 25 feet wide. It's already paved. It's part of the drive aisle as part of the shopping center. 25 feet is no different than a standard road, residential road in the city, actually here in Palm Beach County. They're usually between 24 and 26 feet in width. So that easement is actually sized to accommodate the access. We've had our traffic engineers review this. City engineer has reviewed it, and you'll see here in a moment, this is a letter from Palm Beach County that's part of the file where they review the traffic study for the project, and they find that it meets the traffic performance standards of the county, which the city relies on. One last little tidbit about we will have residents here, so we have to look at the schools. We've received the copy here of this letter from the school district that confirms that there is capacity for schools within the area to support the eventual development. So with that, I think I'm at questions. Oops. Sorry, Rebecca, didn't mean to go there. So I am here, again, Bradley Miller. I'm the planner with Urban Design Studio. Sandy McGrew is here, who has done a ton of work to get to this point, working with your staff. And we also have our traffic engineer available if there's some questions that need to be addressed for traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms. Rosenberg?
Good evening again. Alexis Rosenberg, Senior Planner for the record. So just going over some of the property information again. The property is just under 5 acres, and it's currently, or the last development we had on record was a single-family residence. Currently, it's within the jurisdictions of Palm Beach County with a land use designation of residential high and a zoning designation of agricultural residential. The property shares a border with the city to the east and south and is landlocked by an existing plaza to the south. Legal access to the site is provided through the existing access agreement, which connects West Atlantic Avenue to the southeast corner of the property. The applicant is requesting 4 requests tonight: voluntary annexation into the city of Delray Beach, a small-scale land use map amendment from Palm Beach County Residential High to City of Delray Beach Medium Density Residential, a rezoning from Palm Beach County Agricultural Residential to City of Delray Beach Multiple Family Residential, and an LDR text amendment to create and adopt the Flow Delray Overlay District to establish a revitalization incentive density bonus of up to 24 dwelling units per acre. So here's an aerial of the area, and the site is adjacent to the High Point condominiums to the west and the north, and the Marketplace of Delray West Commercial Plaza to the east and the south. Here is the existing and proposed land use from Palm Beach County Residential High to City of Delray Beach Medium Density Residential. The inset on the upper left is a snippet from map AD1 in the city's comprehensive plan, and it shows that the property has an advisory land use designation of medium density, which is the same land use category that the applicant's proposing. And then here's the existing and proposed zoning from Palm Beach County Agricultural Residential to City of Delray Beach Multiple Family Residential. So the regulations governing a voluntary annexation include the owner of the unincorporated property filing the petition, the subject property being contiguous to a municipality, and consistency with the Always Delray Comprehensive Plan. The annexation request meets the statutory requirements since the property owner submitted the petition for annexation, and the property shares a border with the city to the east and the south. Also, the property is located within the city's planning area with an advisory land use designation of medium density. This is the adopted map in the comprehensive plan that shows the city's future annexation areas. I believe it's the same map that Mr. Miller had up. So the subject site is where the red star is, and that shows the advisory land use designation of medium density. This is a breakdown of the property tax detail in Palm Beach County compared to Delray Beach. So this analysis is based on the current development, which would have been a single-family residence. So while the taxes will be increased if annexed into the city of Delray, the actual impact is anticipated to be higher since the applicant does intend on developing multifamily residential. Going into the land use analysis, so as part of the annexation application, the applicant has to concurrently request a land use designation and a zoning district, since there's no city land use or zoning currently assigned. So when considering the land use change to medium density, the board will have to make findings related to land use, concurrency, consistency, and compliance with the LDRs. Regarding the land use map, the proposed medium density residential district is a preferred implementing zoning district of the medium land use category, with a maximum base density of 12 dwelling units per acre and a maximum density of 24 dwelling units per acre under an incentive program. As it relates to concurrency, the project meets the concurrency for water and sewer, solid waste, drainage, and school capacity. Park impact fees are assessed at $500 per dwelling unit at the time of building permit. Just to circle back to water and sewer, the site is currently connected to well and septic, so any future development will be connected to the existing city water and sewer connections. And if the property were to remain in the county, the use of city water and sewer systems will require an annexation agreement between the property owner and the city, since the property is within the city's service area. Pertaining to traffic, so based on the traffic impact study provided, the existing land use in Palm Beach County, which allows up to 38 units, anticipates approximately 380 daily trips for the site. The applicant has stated that through certain incentive programs through the county, the site could have a maximum of 80 units, which would result in a potential maximum of 539 daily trips if the property was developed as multifamily in Palm Beach County. Under the proposed medium density residential zoning, applying the base density of 12 dwelling units per acre, the development would generate about 580 daily trips, 96 of those trips being peak hour trips. And then analyzing the traffic, applying the density with the incentive program, which is the 24 dwelling units per acre, that would generate approximately 782 daily trips, 105 of those trips being peak hour trips. So going into consistency with the Always Delray comprehensive plan, there are policies that address utilizing incentive programs to achieve a higher density with the provision of workforce housing. And there's also policies that address consistency with the surrounding development in terms of use, intensity, and density. So here we have a table that shows the surrounding properties, development, land use, and zoning. There's Palm Beach County residential high land use and Palm Beach County agricultural residential zoning to the north and west. And the property borders city general commercial land use and planned commercial zoning to the east and south. The maximum allowed density in Palm Beach County residential high is 8 dwelling units per acre, and the maximum density allowed under the general commercial land use within the city is 30 dwelling units per acre under an incentive bonus program. So the requested multifamily residential zoning is generally consistent with the surrounding development. The comprehensive plan also encourages providing improved mobility options, cross-access between properties, and the preservation of natural areas. So while a lot of these will be analyzed at the site plan stage, the board should consider if there's adequate standards in the code and the comprehensive plan to mitigate any potential negative impacts from the development. And regarding compliance with the LDR, the applicant did submit a Class 5 site plan for the construction of 116 units that would proceed with review if the annexation, land use map amendment, rezoning, and LDR text amendment are approved as requested. Additionally, the site plan would be subject to all the LDR requirements and performance standards in order to get to the 24 dwelling units per acre. It's noted that the site plan does not have frontage on a street, which doesn't comply with a certain section of the code that requires all lots to have street frontage. Therefore, if the property is annexed, a relief must be obtained from that section during the site plan process. Also, during review of the site plan, staff is requesting the establishment of bicycle and pedestrian cross-connectivity through the marketplace of Del Rey, which is the plaza to the south, since bicycle and pedestrian cross-connectivity is currently not provided. Going into the rezoning analysis, LDR section 2.4.5 D2 lists the valid reasons for approving a change in zoning. So this application is being processed under the second and third criteria, subject to the subject property is within the city's planning area and future annexation area. Therefore, it's anticipated to be included in the city's municipal boundaries. Also, the voluntary annexation necessitates the adoption of a land use designation and a zoning district, which has to be compatible with the surrounding land uses and zoning districts. The proposed multifamily residential district is a preferred implementing district of the medium density land use and is generally consistent with the surrounding multifamily and commercial uses. Going into LDR section 3.2.2, this outlines the standards for a rezoning application. Just so, as Mr. Miller mentioned, criteria A states that the most restrictive residential zoning district that's applicable has to be applied. This property is requesting a multifamily residential zoning district, which is an implementing district of the medium density land use category and allows a standard density of 6 to 12 dwelling units per acre, and allows up to 24 dwelling units per acre if there's an established revitalization incentive area. Criterion B, C, and E are not applicable, and criterion D requires that the rezoning of a land shall result in uses compatible with the adjacent uses. So the uses permitted in medium density are primarily residential, which is compatible with the surrounding residential and commercial uses. So sorry for the small text. It's not intended to be read, but just to kind of give you guys an example, if the subject applications are approved, a separate site plan application will be reviewed against the LDRs, and this includes standards for site plans and performance standards. So that's what is on the screen to the left and to the bottom right. So these address setbacks, special buffers, landscaping, also pedestrian and bicycle and vehicular interconnections to adjacent properties, open space, traffic circulation, and consistency with nearby development. So it's important to consider that whether these standards properly mitigate impacts of potential development under the requested land use and zoning. So now just jumping into the analysis for the LDR text amendment. Pursuant to LDR section 2.4.5, M5, which are findings, the Commission must make a finding that the text amendment furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. So the proposed overlay establishes a maximum density of 24 dwelling units per acre, provided that 20% of the total number of units are reserved as workforce housing units at a moderate income affordability level. At the standard density, the parcel could be developed with 58 dwelling units. That's at the 12 dwelling units per acre. And at the maximum revitalization incentive density proposed for the overlay, that would be 116 units would be able to be developed. And 24 of those 116 units would be workforce housing units. The moderate income category in Palm Beach County is between $78,640 to $117,960. The proposed LDR text amendment requires a mix of efficiency studios, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units allocated for workforce housing. So this table shows the Palm Beach County's workforce housing rental prices for each income category based on the number of bedrooms. So again, the applicant is requesting the provision of workforce housing units in the form of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units. Based on projected population growth analyzed in the neighborhood districts and corridors and the housing elements of the comprehensive plan, additional housing units are needed generally, and the comprehensive plan implements policies to encourage the use of programs to allow for increased density in order to establish workforce housing. Here's a map of the city's workforce housing incentive area. So the property is located slightly to the west here, right off of Atlantic Avenue. This area that's highlighted in red, that's right around it, is the Four Corners Overlay District. So in that intersection off of West Atlantic Avenue and Military Trail are commercial plazas that have been established for quite some time. Those parcels are located in a zoning district and a land use category that allows a density of up to 30 dwelling units per acre in a mixed use environment under a bonus or a incentive program, but none of those plazas as of yet have come in to take advantage of the program to provide any workforce housing or residential in general. So the board should consider whether the proposed flow overlay district supports the comprehensive plan goals for Military Trail and the Atlantic Avenue intersection. Now just touching on the board considerations, the board should consider whether there's any valid reason to deny the requested annexation based on criteria in objective NDC 3.3 in the comprehensive plan, which states that the city should continue to annex unincorporated areas within the city's planning area. Also, whether the requested medium density land use designation is consistent with the applicable goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. Whether the requested medium density land use allows the most appropriate development to fulfill remaining land use needs, to encourage the private sector to address workforce housing needs by offering incentives, and to expand the housing supply by allowing different unit types in a variety of locations for all income levels. The board should also consider whether there's been a change in circumstance on the site or within the neighborhood that renders the Palm Beach County Agricultural Residential Zoning District inappropriate, whether the requested zoning is of similar intensity as allowed under the medium density land use designation and is more appropriate for the property based upon circumstance to the surrounding neighborhood, whether the requested LDR text amendment to establish workforce housing through a revitalization incentive program within the flow overlay district is consistent and furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan related to the adoption of workforce housing incentives, and whether 20% of moderate income housing provides a sufficient community benefit to warrant the establishment of the revitalization incentive overlay. So here are your board options for all four application types. And that concludes our presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rosenberg. I'll now turn to the public and state that if any member of the public is here this evening who wishes to speak or state their opinion on this item, now is your time to approach the podium. Seeing no one rising, public comment is closed on this item. And I will, Mr. Schiller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for rebuttal cross-examination, none. Thank you so much. But we're here to answer any questions, obviously.
Save a minute of trouble. Ms. Rosenberg, I'll ask you the same question that I was about to ask Mr. Schiller, which is any cross-examination, rebuttal?
No rebuttal, but just a quick correction from the staff's presentation on this slide. It says moderate 1 and 2, so the city, there's just one moderate. So it would still be the range would still be the same, but it's just one moderate category, not two. And it goes up to 120% here. So I'll leave this slide up if you guys have questions.
Which would be 117,000, correct?
Correct, yes.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rosenberg. I'll now turn it over to my colleagues. Ms. Blankenship, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have some questions for the applicant. I don't know if Mr. Schiller, Mr. Miller would like to speak to them. We're going to be asking about the workforce housing units. Mr. Bennett, although we're not to discuss site plan specifically, because they are bringing it in as a special exemption on their overlay, we can discuss the workforce housing component?
Yeah, the workforce housing is definitely part of the conversation since they're proposing not only an overlay district, but one that's modified from some of the standards that are in 4.7. So yes, workforce housing definitely. The project itself is really just an example of what the maximum development rights would be on the site if all 4 applications were approved. So there's no guarantee, of course, that project will be built or what may happen with the site, but it's an example of what approving all 4 applications before you on this item could result in.
And although this is not a waiver to the LDRs, is there something that would be speaking to like a granting of a special privilege if we were to agree to the efficiency provision?
No, because that's not one of the elements, as you said, with a waiver or variances. That's something to consider. Technically, the LDR amendments is more of a legislative item, so it's more of a policy decision. So you'd be making a recommendation to City Commission on whether it'd be appropriate for the city to adopt regulations that created, a subset of overlay rules compared to the rules that apply to the other overlays.
Thank you.
If I can also add to that, we, within the different overlays we have, particularly with the SADs, we've had many of our incentive areas will exempt out a certain portion that they don't want to apply in that particular overlay, so it wouldn't be unheard of. And to the point I think Mr. Miller made about efficiencies, we are, as the Development Services Department, looking at bringing forward an amendment to commission which would eliminate that restriction from including efficiency units as part of a workforce housing program, largely just because of the nationwide demographic changes with the younger cohorts not creating these larger families that need larger bedrooms. So there is a greater demand for these smaller units. So we're going to bring it forward when we can bring some analysis with it and see if that's something that the planning board and the commission would be interested in making as a change. Like, we understand there's a lot of reasons why large families do need workforce housing products, but there's also that huge demand within for smaller units.
But right now, we're just looking at what sits on the books to the LDRs today.
Correct.
So in terms of the workforce housing units, I saw a slide in your presentation that I didn't really look at it clearly enough, which was it said the mixture, how many efficiencies you anticipate there being.
I think staff's pulling it up right now.
You understand I have my concerns only because we are not, you're not considering spreading out the workforce housing over all of your units, so the 3-bedroom. So do you anticipate having 4-bedroom units?
Go ahead, you can talk.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Miller. Do you anticipate having 4-bedroom units?
No. We're stopping at 3.
I wasn't sure because it says in your slide it says 4-bedroom. And so if you're making the 4-bedroom as part of the overlay language, then let's say that somehow your project doesn't get built or you change what you want to do, then it would be available to you to use 4-bedroom, not considered for workforce housing. You see my concern? If that language is included in the overlay, in the LDR text amendment, that would be a possibility for you going forward.
I think that's something that we can consider since we're not anticipating 4-bedroom units and can work with the staff on
perhaps eliminating that language or at least modifying it.
Right.
And also, I guess my next problem, did we have a slide that had, I thought there was a slide that said like 23 units or something was the efficiencies. It was in your presentation. Mr. Schiller, do you remember? It was in parentheses next to it. Yeah.
We're getting you answers. and
Okay,
we're
thank
getting
you so much.
Yeah, I think I jumped to the slide that I wasn't supposed to show because it had
Oh, well,
site
can we go
plans.
back to that slide because you did show it on the record? So would you?
It was a blink.
No. It was shown on the record, so if we could go back to it, that would be amazing.
Staff, you okay with that?
It was part of your testimony.
Yeah. Please.
Well,
I think it's just our concern about showing site plans at this stage.
Well, because it's included workforce housing seeking relief from in the
I
text
think that's our
amendment.
trepidation. We don't want to get.
I
yelled at
understand,
by
but
the
you
city
showed it as
attorney.
part of your
If-
testimony earlier.
No, I mean, if we see the chart, so it'd be a simple math question, right? So
Right.
you'll
Here it is.
have,
That's it. That's it. Okay. That's all I was looking for, was to
Yes.
see the distribution. I know it's potential, and I know it's not set in stone, but it just went by really quickly earlier, so I just wanted to look at it.
Typically, I have 4 blank slides after the one I'm supposed to land on.
No,
so-
I understand. I just wanted to see the distribution, because it matters if we're going to include the efficiencies, exactly what that looks like. Is it 50% of the entire project is going to be efficiencies? What's the mix? So
but to be clear, those numbers can change.
they're arbitrary.
So the
Yeah.
only thing really to focus on would be that the maximum developable units would be 116,
Well,
or because it'd be the
I
the
thought-
density per acre. Is that correct, Rebecca? It'd still be at 116 regardless of the mix.
What was the 22%
the
then?
20, here, hold on one second.
So
I just wanna
20%
interject here.
of the units have to be workforce housing. 22% of those units have to be efficiencies.
I see.
No, that was not
Well-
what was said. That was not what was said. What was said was up to 22% of the units in the complex could be efficiencies. Correct, Mr. Schiller?
No.
No, so
No?
the percentage of efficiency workforce units to market rate efficiency units shall not exceed 22%.
Right.
Right,
And
22% of the efficiency units would be.
One bedrooms and 2 bedroom workforce units would have to be equal.
Okay.
Correct.
So it'd be an
so
equal number
If you were to
of
look
1
at
and 2.
that, you would say 4 units would be efficiencies, and the remainder would be split evenly between 1 and 2 bedroom units. Is that the way you would
Or a
interpret that, Mr. Bennett?
22% would be efficiencies, and then the other,
Which would be
Like
essentially 4 units.
It's a maximum.
22.
Right, so-
78% would be.
So under the numbers, just from a number perspective that are up there, 4 of the 18 efficiencies would be workforce housing. Then whatever number you would need, I guess there's 23 units left, so you'd have 19 units that are supposed to be evenly distributed between 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom.
And you were
Right.
in no way willing to include the 3-bedroom units in those, because families do need workforce housing. And although you would like to, I can see having that 22% or perhaps the majority in efficiency, but then to exclude the 3-bedroom seems counterintuitive to what the city was trying to do with including workforce housing to all, families, things of that nature. I don't know if they heard me. They were talking amongst themselves.
Well,
I'm not sure.
we're not supposed to get into the numbers, but actually, we have 12 3-bedroom units.
I understand,
So by
but
the time you put those percentages together, it may be 1.
well, one's better than nothing. Do you see what I'm saying? Our LDRs state, first of all, the LDRs as they stand, regardless of what could happen in the future, says efficiencies are not to be considered as part of the workforce housing. So you're already seeking, an amendment to that. And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Bennett, that it's the LDRs, do they state that it's supposed to be a mix throughout the different types of units? I thought it was supposed to be, if it was 1, 2, 3 bedroom, then it was supposed to be a mix. between-
So what
Evenly distributed.
what I've found so far, because I actually was trying to find that same provision. So section 479 as drafted right now, subsection H is no efficiency or studio type unit shall be allowed. And then I is the total number of 1-bedroom units shall not exceed 30% of the total number of units. And I'm not aware of or have found a provision yet that delineates how they should be spread across different sized units.
Okay, very good. Just wanted to make sure. I'll listen and hear what my colleagues have to say. Okay, thank you.
The only real prohibition we have is that it does say that no more than 30% of a project that is developed with workforce housing in it can be 1 bedroom, and that's including market and workforce together. So that's the only limitation.
Well, it would seem to me, Ms. Dasari, that if 22% is efficiencies, that leaves 78% for 1 and 2 bedrooms. So that would be, and if it's evenly distributed, you'd be at 39% for one bedrooms and 39% for two bedrooms.
Ms. Morrison shaking her head no. I'd like to hear what you have.
But there's a large number of two bedrooms, so wouldn't that make more two bedrooms workforce
No,
than one
because what
bedrooms?
they're saying,
It's actually not 22% of the total.
Right.
It's 22% of the efficiency units.
right, so what I'm
So
saying is,
in this case, we have 18, Mr. Bennett's
That's
correct,
four.
there'd be 4.
right, so it'd be,
And we have a total of 23, his math was right, so there's 19 left to spread across one bedroom and two bedroom.
right, which would make it, you'd have about 39% each for one bedroom of your affordable units.
So the way the provision reads is,
Please
the
read.
total number of one-bedroom units in any qualifying project shall not exceed 30% of the total number of units in the project, including both family unit, workforce units, and market rate units.
Oh, so they're not over it.
Right, so I think you've got 30 out of 116 units under the example that's being presented.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's way under.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. So there'll be more two-bedroom workforce than there will be one-bedroom, because you have a considerably larger number of two bedrooms than one bedrooms. Is that correct?
It's a
Yes.
proportion.
It's a proportion, right.
Correct.
So there'll be mostly two-bedroom workforce, then one bedroom, and then 4 efficiencies. Got it? It's not evenly broken.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So the density of the surrounding multifamily is, staff, 8 per, does that mean it's 8 per acre?
So right now, to the west and to the north, the High Point condominiums,
Yeah.
the land use designation the current land use designation allows a maximum of 8 dwelling units per acre. When we took a look at the site, or the latest approval for the High Point condominiums, it appeared to be the density was 9.25 dwelling units per acre, so it was right around that number.
And is this property that's being considered for annexation currently in the Four Corners overlay?
It is not.
It is not. Okay, the
It's-
Four Corners overlay stops at the shopping center.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, because since this parcel isn't annexed into the city yet, so the Four Corners didn't include that parcel, but it is adjacent to it.
Okay, thank you.
Next. Mr. Zeller.
Yes. We're missing half the point about workforce housing. They're only doing moderate income workforce housing. They're excluding low and very low workforce housing. There's no reason to exclude them other than you want to make more money. And that's, in my view, is not sufficient to carry this project. You say that there's a change in circumstances. There's no change in circumstances other than the change that you're creating. So it's a self-inflicted change in circumstances. And the other provision that you're relying on does not satisfy the consistency requirements. It's not compatible with the surrounding area. You created this overlay zone. You just unilaterally chose to exclude low and very low income housing. I think staff's report set out in detail and in good detail as to what the income categories are for low and very low. And there's absolutely, you claim, this is what offends me about it. You claim that there's a need for workforce housing. Yes, there's a need for workforce housing. Unquestionably, there's a need. But there's a need for low and very low income workforce housing. You have nurses, teachers, EMS people, restaurant staffers, you have all these people that may perhaps want to live in Delray Beach, and they don't make the moderate income levels that you're seeking of 80% to 120% of almost $100,000, which is the rounding in figures, the number that's used for Palm Beach County. So you're asking for all this relief, and you're not giving us anything. You're not giving the city and the residents anything for it, and I'm not going to be in favor of this if you are excluding, unilaterally chosen to exclude, very low and low income component, and it should be an equal number of very low, low, and moderate income. So if you have, again, 24 units, you say you have 23, but let's make the math very easy. You have 24 units, you have 6% of very low, 6% of low, and 6% of moderate income. That's what it should be, and it should be dispersed equally throughout the whole development so that there's no stigma presumably attached if you stick them all in one building.
Sure.
That is the goal of having workforce housing. That's it, not just exclude them. So I think the staff report, and I can go through all the LDRs that I found that are not consistent with the LDRs and why this application on all four of its levels of requested relief.
So, Mr. Zeller, if there was a question there, I may have a response that may half satisfy you. I did speak to my client about the distribution of moderate, low, and very low. They were willing to go and include the low in addition to the moderate, which has been past pattern and practice for the city for low in addition to moderate. The requirement for very low, as your staff pointed out, is not in the code. I think that if there is an opportunity to do something like that, we would look into it. But I've been authorized to go down to include the low in addition to the moderate. So if that changes your mind,
You haven't given us a pro forma on this, so we have no way of knowing whether that's accurate or not accurate.
I mean, it's the same. Just like we'd be complying with the limits of the flow overlay district, which I do want to remind you that it was part of the presentation that the neighboring GC or the neighboring Four Corners district is up to 30 units to the acre. This does, with all due respect, this does give the city more workforce housing than currently exists there. And as a resident out west, there isn't workforce housing west of Military. There's just not.
That's the problem. That's the big problem. And the projects that were approved were all approved for moderate only. The one on Germantown Road and Congress Avenue, that one was approved.
Mr. Zeller, let me just interrupt you here, because I share your views on affordable housing, okay? But that being said, there is the only requirement here in the city is at the moderate level.
But in fairness, this is not an application to build something
I
pursuant to
agree.
land development
Thank
regulations. This is an amendment
In an
to
overlay
add, to
district we're
change
creating.
rules to apply.
And they create the amendment. And so we're supposed to swallow it whole just because they create it.
I think they just
No, I
proffer it,
think,
though, to
I
include
think
the
they,
low.
I
It
think
would be
that,
one thing if the city made the request, but this is a privately initiated request
Well, I
that they want us to swallow.
Well, and
They
to
want us
clarify
to
that
clear-cut.
language a little bit, because your findings are whether the amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comp plan. And I think Mr. Zeller is articulating that just without using those specific words, was finding that the amendment as proposed does not meet those
Any
goals,
of the
objectives of the comp
Thank
plan.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then on top of all of that, you're asking us to agree to clear cut this 5-acre piece of land, destroy all the wildlife, the trees, the habitat, and everything else. Again, what for? What are the benefits if you're not going to create workforce housing that really is a need for the city, which you claim that you recognize, and not give anything?
Chair, I think
Well,
it might be
yes.
helpful actually to at least bisect the applications from a discussion standpoint at least, because it's really the annexation, land use map, and rezoning that would permit some type of redevelopment beyond what's there now.
Thank you.
The text amendment would apply, if passed and accepted by the city commission, but, they're not
Very
as
distinct.
intertwined as much as the annexation, the land use map, and the rezoning
Yes.
are.
Yes. So if we could start and stick to those, that may be best, but I think that the workforce housing is such an integral component to this. That's the part everybody's kind of speaking about. I'll
If I
turn to
could
you,
add-
Mr. Zeller.
Could I
Excuse
add
me,
one more point
Mr. Miller?
on the
I just
workforce? I
want to,
like your suggestion, Attorney Bennett, but the Marketplace West development and the overlay that it's in actually allows for moderate and low workforce housing. So what Mr. Schiller offered up, our initial application was for the moderate. Keeping it moderate and low would be consistent with what's already allowed under the Marketplace Shopping Center redevelopment plan.
thank you,
So there's
Mr.
some
Miller.
consistency there. A
There
little
is.
bit of consistency, sir.
Well, the other way to create it, are you talking about 20%? Is that what you're talking about? Because you keep talking about a maximum of 20% being affordable. Number one, it doesn't have to be limited at 20%, but taking 20% as a reasonable factor, then it should be equally dispersed through whatever your housing product is going to be. It can't be all your efficiencies or your four
I think that's what
efficiencies or whatever.
Mr. Schiller just offered.
Well, I offered low and moderate, not the very low. I want to be very clear for the record. I offered low and moderate, which again, Mr.
And
Miller
would those
just
be
testified.
distributed evenly amongst the unit mix?
It would
Yes.
be distributed with the percentages we were talking
We were
about.
talking about
So
on the
excluding
efficiency
the
1
I don't
and
want to get
2.
into the math again, but the
Right.
22 and the
Yeah.
80,
The
78.
efficiencies 1 and 2 bedrooms, excluding the
Equally
3 bedrooms.
distributed and equally dispersed throughout.
Excluding
Well,
the 3
the
bedrooms.
dispersion part is actually already in the code.
Yes.
You
Right.
can't create like a workforce
A
housing
separate
wing.
building.
They have to be equally dispersed, and there's additional rules about them having same quality and craftsmanship and some other issues. But if I'm understanding correctly, they're offering to maintain the same distribution between efficiency 1 and 2 bedrooms, but that those numbers are then be equally split between low and moderate? Okay.
Would you consider including the 3 bedrooms in that distribution mix? Although it may be 1 or 2 units, it's still meeting the need, potential need?
And no 2 bedrooms?
No, 2
They're all
bedrooms.
2 bedrooms.
Mostly 2 bedrooms.
Mr. Zeller, they just said efficiencies 1 and 2 bedroom evenly distributed amongst
Okay.
them as they laid out.
Can I ask a threshold question that I had before we started in with the workforce housing?
Sure.
What happens if you don't get this access that you?
They have it.
They don't have it. There's no agreement.
Well, that's site plan.
They
They
have
have
it.
it.
I thought you said you already had legal
No, they
access.
We have an access easement. We're negotiating with
A
the
modification
owner to
of it.
modify it.
There's a hole in the wall that access to the east.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to get through site plan without a roadway, without an
Without-
ingress and egress.
Yeah, engineering and fire have both asked for 2 access points, so
Which
that
is what they're
going to be
negotiating.
part of the site plan
Moving it
project.
to the main entrance being the western
And
and the
several-
emergency being the eastern.
Okay,
several
so
other
my
funds.
question really was, if you didn't get this main access point that you're proposing or you're hoping to get from the marketplace, does this project fail? Does it go away?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I don't know that.
We'd have to see what fire and rescue would talk about if they didn't have two access points. But I think that that's somewhat a hypothetical for this evening. The discussion we're having about, and that I keep wanting to bring us back to, is let's bring it back to the annexation. Should this property be annexed into the city, and under what circumstances?
And I think, but we can't just disregard, I know that it's almost like three, and then the overlay is kind of over here, the text amendment, but they kind of go together in a way, because unless we take it out of the, and consider it as a separate item.
I tell you what.
Well,
They are
all,
separate, aren't
yeah,
they?
all,
Mr.
all
Mr.
four
Snyder.
applications will have 4 separate motions.
Okay.
Right, exactly. So we're gonna have separate motions on each aspect of this.
So we can
Mr. Snyder.
vote to annex the property into the city, change the land use and change the zoning, which basically, if you annex it, you have to do that, as far as I can see. It's not.
It's what the zoning would be
Yes.
changed to, right?
But we can do all that and then not approve the overlay.
Well,
It's just a
and just to
recommendation.
clarify, yes.
It's a recommendation.
So the
Well,
annexation,
recommend it.
Right.
Okay.
technically all 4 are
Are
recommendations.
recommendations.
Right.
However, just for full disclosure, the rezoning language does state that it goes to city commission with a recommendation of approval. So the annexation, the land use map amendment, and the text amendment could all proceed even with recommendations of denial. The rezoning gets a little more complicated because they would have to appeal the recommendation of denial to then have everything brought in full before city commission. But yes, all 4 are recommendations.
So I have
Thank you,
another
Mr. Bennett.
threshold question, if
Excuse
I
me,
may.
1 second, Mr. Zeller. I want to give Mr. Brown the
Your left-
opportunity to
your left
speak.
side.
Yes. He's been waiting patiently.
Mr. Miller, Mr. Schiller,
Yes, sir.
I think you have a very reasonable application here. I'm not in agreement with the issue of very low or even low. I think the definition, and I want to ask Rebecca this question, does Palm Beach County have a definition of workforce housing? They presented in their petition that they're going to do workforce housing. Does Palm Beach County, now I've been in the housing business for a very long time, and I have built very low housing. I've built tax credit housing before. And so I'm very familiar with it. And even the state has changed their regulations on tax credit housing. They now allow 80% in the tax credit housing. 30, they go down to 30%, 40, 50, 80, all the way up. So what's Palm Beach County's definition of workforce housing as a percentage of AMI?
So we go by our own definition. Palm Beach County includes a 120 to 140%, which they call high moderate, but we only have very low, low, and moderate. Very low is 60%, and below low is 60 to 80, and then moderate is 80 to 120. So we don't have all of the categories that Palm Beach County has.
Okay, so you don't follow Palm Beach County?
No.
Okay, many cities.
But we do follow the standards of the state
Yeah.
generally for the
So
different income
their
ranges.
policy of 50, 80, 120 is a moderate category?
So we don't have the definitions up, but we go by the 60 to 80 and then 80 to 120 percentages without any of the so
So the lowest
In
we
our-
go is 60.
yeah, so like Florida Housing Finance Corporation, for example, like, and then when the city receives the SHIP
Yep.
funding for that, they go by the 60 to 80, the 80 to
80 to
120
120.
categories. Yeah, so we go
Florida
by the ones.
housing, Florida housing?
We would follow the Florida Housing Finance,
that's a
but
good-
we do not include the high moderate in our workforce housing programs.
Okay. I think I'm in agreement with your percentages you're presenting already. I think that's very reasonable. If you want to make concessions for low, or one section of low, which I guess is under 50%. That's up to you, but I'm going to support your project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Chair, I
yeah.
just want to clarify the percentages. So
Yeah.
in our code right now, low is considered 61 to 80%, and moderate is 81 to 120.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. It's not below 50, just to make
Stated in
Yeah,
the, in the
that's a
memo,
big
which
issue.
is 51 to 80.
No, come on.
That's what he said.
Dishwasher as opposed
Thank
to
you.
a dishwasher as opposed to a nurse.
51 to 80 of AMI
Rebecca,
is low.
is that 51 to 80% that's in the staff report a proposed change under the Chapter 2 changes, or was that transposed over from the county?
I think it's probably a typographical error. What page of the staff report are you on?
Page 14, there's a chart at the top.
Oh, so that is a typo. It should have been the
61?
up to 60 and then 61 to 80.
So those numbers then are off.
Yeah, so when you look at our LDR though, it's the up to 60, 61 to 80, and then 81 to 20. So the number, it's a typographical error in the staff report.
Okay, so then the income range of 48,701 to 77,900, the upper limit is the same, is correct, but the lower limit is off. Because that was calculated at 50%
1%.
of the 98.7 or whatever. 98.3 is the
AMI.
the average median income.
Yeah, it would be 50, 55.
I'm trying to pull this up just to confirm that. 1 second, please.
So, Mr. Schiller, was that a no on including the 3-bedroom units? Was that a no? While they're looking that up, I'll just get clarification.
We, with Ms. Blankenship,
Yes, Mr. Schiller.
we gave in on the low to be consistent with the GC. The 3 bedrooms, I think we only have 4 of them in totality. 4?
I think 6.
No, 16?
16?
12? I don't know.
4.
But the whole
Only
point
four.
is if the project doesn't get built or something
12.
happens, we're still approving an overlay district.
So,
You see what Mike
but
was
Mr.
saying.
Schiller, you didn't give in on it. I mean, you arbitrarily set your own standards. You're not giving in. You created this zone. You could have created it at whatever you wanted.
Right, and
We wouldn't have argued with you over that if you did that.
and,
So
and,
just
and
create some 3 bedrooms. Pull them out of the air.
okay. My client is
It's a
giving us
new
the go
year.
ahead on on including the 3 bedroom.
Thank you so much.
One, right?
It doesn't
would be
matter.
one.
As long as it's included and they do the comp. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we're at a position of saying, from what I hear around here, is we're going to propose a motion that says, as amended, with amendments to the.
Yes, there'll be
within the
amendments,
LDR,
exactly.
to include low and to include 3
Just in
bedroom.
the
Yes.
LDR text amendment part, as far as
Yeah,
I know.
yeah, the LDR text.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm on the same.
Yes, and to
Thing.
remove the language for the 4-bedroom that was in the proposed text amendment, or modify it.
That's okay. I'd like to talk about.
Since
the-
everybody's spoken at this point, okay, since everybody's
Mr.
spoken
Chair, I'd
at
love to
this
hear what you
point,
have to say.
let me say, Mr. Schiller, thank you and your client for making the concessions because you're making my life a lot easier, okay?
Thank you.
Aside from my colleagues up here, listen, there are fiscal realities out there, but we do have a real problem with workforce housing. Your client's getting a significant benefit by being annexed into the city. He doesn't have to build his project on septic and well. But, yeah, right? He doesn't have to deal with the county. And it's nice to see that he's being reasonable and making a very fair offer to come into the city. I think that when I first looked at this parcel and you and I spoke, you look at it, it's surrounded by very old commercial on two sides that is in serious need of an upgrade, like the project to the east of it across Military Trail has been upgraded.
Sure.
And the other part of the Four Corners District, which is to the direct south of this parcel on the other side of Atlantic Ave. So I think that the parcel your client is going to develop, I think it's great that there's shopping very close by. There's public transportation right at the, extremely short distance away. This is one of those situations where we look at it and we go, people can come home and on the weekend they can walk to go get their groceries, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact that we're finally going to get some affordable housing out on the westernmost edge of our city, I think is a very positive thing. And, I'm hoping that the people next door at the commercial center are playing nice with you and are going to give you that access on the east side. There's really no reason they shouldn't. It's going to make it a much better project, and it's going to keep the vast majority of your traffic off a part of their property. So I just want to say that literally the concessions your client made on the affordable housing totally tipped me over the edge, and I'll be happy to support this project.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll be
Chair.
happy to make motions, unless somebody else has anything else. Rebecca, could you put the... Now I can start from the staff report.
And please, if anybody else is looking at this as we're all talking about these motions, if anything is missed, please bring it to, my or Mr. Bennett's attention to make sure we're not missing anything on this. Even though it is just a recommendation for the most part.
Move a recommendation of approval to the City Commission of Ordinance Number 36-23, a privately initiated request to annex 4.87 acres from Palm Beach County, located at 5185 Atlantic Avenue, by adopting the findings of fact and law contained in the staff report and finding that the annexation and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the applicable criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second?
I thought we were going to amend it.
No, that's the last
No,
one.
this is just
text
the
amendment.
annexation. That's the text amendment.
You're right, second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Blankenship, second by Ms. Morrison. Ms. Miller, if you call the roll, please.
Julian Blankenship,
Yes.
Christina Morrison,
Yes.
Chris Brown,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder,
Yes.
Alan Zeller,
Yes.
Joy Hall is absent, Chris Davy.
Yes, let the record show the item was approved by a vote of 6-0. Another motion.
Move a recommendation of approval to the City Commission of Ordinance Number 37-23, a privately initiated request for a land use map amendment, LUMA, from Palm Beach County Residential High HR 8 to City of Delray Beach Medium Residential MD for a 4.87 acre property located at 5185 Atlantic Avenue, finding that the amendment and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the applicable criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Blankenship, second by Ms. Morrison. Ms. Miller, if you could please call the roll.
Julian Blankenship,
Yes.
Christina Morrison,
Yes.
Chris Brown,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder,
Yes.
Alan Zeller,
Yes.
Joy Hall is absent, Chris Davy.
Yes, let the record show that item passed by a vote of 6-0. Next slide.
I'm like, move a recommendation of approval to the City Commission of Ordinance Number 38-23, a privately initiated rezoning request from Palm Beach County Agricultural Residential AR to City of Delray Beach Multiple Family Residential RM for a 4.87 acre property located at 5185 Atlantic Avenue, finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the applicable criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Blankenship, second by Ms. Morrison. Ms. Miller, if you could please call the roll.
Julian Blankenship,
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes.
Chris Brown,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder,
Yes.
Alan Zeller,
Yes.
Joy Hall absent, Chris Davy.
Yes. Let the record show that item passed by a vote of 6-0.
Move a recommendation of approval as amended to the City Commission of Ordinance Number 39-23, a privately initiated land development regulation, LDR text amendment, to create a revitalization overlay district known as the Flo Del Rey Overlay District, to pursue a density bonus of up to 24 dwelling units per acre at the property located at 5185 Atlantic Avenue, finding that the amendment and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the applicable criteria set forth in the land development regulations, with the amendment consisting of modifying the 4-bedroom language as discussed in the meeting, including low to moderate income for the workforce housing, and also including the 3-bedroom units as part of the distribution mix.
And is there an equal distribution?
Yes.
To the distribution that they had proffered to us, so equal to 22% of
And then the
efficiency.
remaining split between 1 and 2 with a 3rd-bedroom unit added into the mix.
For a second for discussion.
Please.
So is the 3-bedroom unit over and above the 22 units, or is it included in the,
The 20%,
It's included within.
it's included in the 20%?
yeah.
Which I think is 23 units, isn't it, or is it 22?
Mr. Bennett?
So it was 23 under the example provided to the board.
Right.
So if I understand the analysis, or I'll try to
116
clarify,
units.
low and moderate will be equally distributed among all the units.
Yes.
The 3-bedroom, so currently the proposal has 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms being proportionately equal distribution. So you're just making the 3rd-bedroom units of equal proportion as well, so that
Yes.
1, 2, and 3 bedrooms will be of equal to the proportion.
No, okay,
No.
Mr. Schiller?
No, because
If there's
how many
23
3-bedrooms are there?
12.
But there's 56 2-bedrooms, there's gotta be a different,
There's not, we're talking 19 units, there's 4 efficiencies. Oh, hold on.
wait a minute.
Isn't that what
Let's
they
let's
said?
just think about something. They said 22% will be
Well,
efficiency.
Technically, it says will not exceed 22%.
well, let's
But
just say-
assuming that whoever develops the property will maximize the efficiencies at 22%.
So let's say it's 22. So that then leaves 78%,
No, let's do it
correct?
this way.
But even underneath their chart, it's not an equal distribution
Correct.
of the 78%. So if you have 50 out of 100 1-bedrooms, then that's a 50%. You know,
How about this?
Can we
How
leave the
about
language?
this?
I know the
off?
way it's
How about-
drafted
So-
creates a confusing math problem.
If we have 20, they say 23.
Can I make a suggestion here? Just 1 second.
Itemize them.
Why don't we, there's 12 3-bedroom units, okay? If Mr. Schiller would be so kind, look at it, he's getting nervous, he's getting nervous.
You can
If he
see
would
it.
contemplate, here's what I would
Well, they have a more
propose or
district, that's
proffer.
why.
Not that I'm proffering anything, but let's just say
Well,
we'll
but
propose.
You're choosing to recommend an approval as amended, so you are driving the ship right
What
now.
I think would be reasonable, be 22% of the efficiency units, up to 22% of the efficiency units.
So how many,
Since you, hold on a minute.
how many is 22% of
Hang
the
on, wait, no,
Hold on,
that's a,
I'm talking percentages.
yeah,
four,
let's just wait.
okay?
Everybody
And
just
what
wait.
I would suggest would be, Mr. Schiller would concede 2 units of the 3-bedroom units, and the rest evenly distributed amongst 1 and 2-bedroom units.
Is there a way that we can just say that there's no equal distribution? Like, is it, I mean, I feel like we're getting way
Well,
too into minutia here with telling
There is,
them.
and it's because of the way the chart
Is
was
written.
proposed.
Yeah.
Right,
Um,
and
the-
the unit mix they're proposing.
Yeah.
If the board wants to provide some flexibility to let staff move forward with the
Yes.
applicant, I would
say.
recommend
That's a great idea.
amending the motion that's pending to say that the ordinance as amended to include 3 bedrooms within the distribution, and then staff and the applicant can work together to figure out what language or maximize the number of 3 bedrooms that can be presented to city commission.
What
I accept that friendly amendment.
Ms. Dassery, yes.
Yes.
What I think is reasonable, a little bit less than 20% of the 2-bedroom units will be 2.4. Move it down to 2.
Well, we're not going to split hairs here.
No, move it down to 2.
Are you agreeable with that?
3-bedroom, you mean?
That we'll let you and staff can discuss it before you come to commission? And
You'll
Yes, absolutely.
hash it out.
100%. Thank you.
Perfect.
Great idea.
So we had the movement accept an amendment, low and moderate equal splits not changing, but the language is just being modified to reflect that 3 bedrooms will be included within the distribution list, the applicant working with staff.
That'd be
Okay, and then
great.
Ms. Morrison, I believe you had the second for discussion, so you accept that amendment?
I do.
Great.
Great. With that being said, Ms. Miller, if you got all that.
That's right. Julian
But you have the
Blankenship.
benefit of being able to go back and listen to the tape.
Sure. Julian Blankenship,
Yes.
Christina Morrison,
Yes.
Chris Brown,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder,
Yes.
Alan Zeller,
Yes.
Joy Howe is absent, Chris Davy.
Yes. Mr. Schiller,
Thank you guys so much.
congratulations,
Thank
good
you.
luck.
Happy
And
New
do
Year
you
to
know
all.
what
Happy
it
New
was
Year.
to get that vote over there? Do you know what it was?
He's a tough one. Thank you.
Good luck
Thank
on
you
your
all.
project.
Good luck, Mr. Miller. Thank you. Good luck. What? Yes, those are the appointments. So, do you? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was good. It was a, what do they say? A win-win. I feel like Al Giacchetti would say that. Right. So, where is Ms. Rodriguez? Right there. Ms. Rodriguez. You're on deck.
Grizel Rodriguez, Senior Planner, introducing item 2023-188. It is a plat.
Mr. Carney, why are you in your seat?
Chair, do ex
Said he could
parte.
stay over there.
Thank you. Is there any ex parte communication before you start speaking? Ms. Miller. Excuse me, Ms. Morrison, sorry.
Ex parte, I know the site very well.
Mr. Brown?
No, I never talked to the applicant nor his attorney, but I do know the site well.
None for me.
Visited the site.
I visited the site as well.
Great. I visited the site and I spoke to Mr. Carney about it, I think. But I'll disclose it anyway.
Well, I asked you whether we could go first, because I knew I was going to be quick.
Got second.
Okay, the timer is on.
Yeah, the timer's on.
Exactly. My name's Tom Carney. I'm the agent for the applicant. Sean McAllister is representing the applicant, works for the applicant. This is a straightforward plat that was required by the city. The site plan's actually already been approved through SPRAB. I'm not going to bore you with the justification, going through all the points of the justification letter, except to say that we have met all the standards that are required in Chapter 3. And I'm going to turn it over to Sean to go through the details of the proposed plat.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Mr.
Good evening,
McAllister?
everybody.
Great.
Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. This should hopefully be pretty simple. So just go ahead and get started. As Tom mentioned, so just a little brief history on the site itself. So as Tom mentioned, there was a Class 5 site plan approval. It actually dates back sometime to 2018. Has since been extended through a number of executive orders. You see, obviously, there from COVID-19 and a few of different hurricanes. So the site plan approval is still active. It was all done actually under prior ownership, who eventually decided, I think after COVID-19 had decided they were no longer going to move forward with the project, to where we had kind of stepped in and purchased the parcel, including obviously the approved site plan, and worked with the staff here to, move through some of these extensions so that it is still applicable. And obviously, as part of that, which the previous owner did not do, is this step in getting the plat. So that's where we are now. Here, just real quick, I'm sure, mostly everyone is familiar with the area and familiar with the site, so just highlighting it there. This is the approved site plan, so it is for townhomes there. Kind of hard exactly to tell, but kind of a square with each quadrant being one unit. And then this is the first sheet. I know you can't really read it, but the first sheet of the plat, signature page, and the meat of the plat, which kind of just shows the different, the breakup of the lots. And that's pretty much it.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Ms. Rodriguez, anything for us?
Sure. The plat is at 142 Northeast 7th Avenue. The board's being asked to certify the preliminary plat and to render a recommendation to the City Commission for final plat approval. Next slide. The brief history of the property is that it was platted in 1910. There was an apartment building built in 1927. And in October of 2018, there was the Class 5 site plan approval that is mentioned already. It is a 10-unit apartment building. Its zoning district is medium-density residential, and the land use is medium-density residential. Next slide, please. The elements of the plat are basically a replat of the portion of lots 11 and 12 in Plat Book 1, page 3, Town of Linton, block 115. The 4 lots will be for fee simple townhouses. The dedication of a 5-foot utility easement along the unnamed alley on the west side. There is a dedication of a 5-foot right-of-way along the east side for lots 1 and 2. There's a dedication of a 5-foot limited access easement on Northeast 2nd Avenue, and a dedication of the corner clip at the corner of Northeast 2nd Avenue. Next slide. The lots range in size from 3,441 to 4,139, a little variety in terms of lot sizes and design. Next slide, please. The land use and the zoning is shown here. The star indicates the location of the property, medium density residential and residential multifamily. Next slide, please. The required findings are land use, concurrency, consistency, and compliance with the LDRs. The land use map is a preferred zoning district, is medium density residential is the preferred zoning district. The concurrency is the 4-unit development met concurrency at the time of approval in 2018 for the Class 5 project. Consistency, there are elements of the neighborhood development corridor and the housing sections and LDR 3.2.3. There are no areas of concern as the site plan is approved. And compliance with the LDRs, this plat complies with the LDRs. Next slide, please. The required findings of concurrency is that there is water and sewer drainage on site and will be accommodated for this new project. The applicant has posted a surety bond in the amount of $125,108 for service improvements already so that the plat can move forward to commission. There is a park impact fee of $500 per dwelling unit to be assessed. There is a decrease in intensity from the existing development of 10-unit multifamily dwellings. And the traffic study states that there will be a reduction in daily trips from 69 trips to 28, going to 10 units to 4 units on the site. Next slide, please. The section 3.1.1C, the consistency policies, is the opportunity to develop fee simple townhouses for home ownership. Maintains a multifamily housing which is consistent with the surrounding area, and it meets the neighborhood character with existing townhouses. Next slide, please. The adjacent land use and zoning is to the north is a medium density multifamily residential. To the south is multiple family residential with a single family home on the lot Adjacent to the east is multifamily residential, and to the west is Central Business District, Commercial Core, and it currently has a multifamily residential project on it of condos. The medium-density residential land use is consistent with adjacent land uses. Next slide, please. Notices were sent to the Homeowners Association, Renaissance, and the review by others will consist of City Commission review for final action. Next slide. The options for the board for the preliminary plat is to move approval, denial, or continue with direction. And next slide, and then approval for the final plat. Again, approval, denial, or continue with direction.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Perfect. I'll now open up this item to public comment. If there's any member of the public here, would like you to come forward and line up behind Mr. Carney there. At any rate, seeing no member of the public rising to speak, we'll close public comment right now as well. And Mr. Carney, Mr. McAllister, I would just ask you, do you have any cross-examination or rebuttal for the city?
Nope.
Nope. And Ms. Rodriguez, do you have any for the applicant? None.
Thank you.
Great. And I can now turn it over to board discussions. Anybody have a comment on this?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes, sir.
I'm appalled at this presentation, absolutely appalled. And I think part of it is your responsibility. There's not one picture of a 1927 historic building in your presentation. There's not one policy about preservation of historic building that you in your report. I'm absolutely, now you've touched my button, and everybody on this board knows. I know what Mr. Zeller's button is. Now they all know what my button is. I've lived in this town for over 30 years, and the charm of this city was built in the 1930s and the 1920s. Why don't we just tear down Old School Square and build a townhouse project? Why not, Ms. Rodriguez? Why not, Rebecca?
Mr. Brown,
Hold on.
frankly,
No,
I think.
excuse me. Can I just stop in
Yes.
here?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Brown.
I'm very emotional
Brown.
about this because the reason I got on this
Mr. Brown,
board.
can I just interrupt you here a second?
Yes, sir. You want to quiet me down?
No, I just want to mention something to you. I just want to tell you something.
What?
There was a building built on this in 1927. Nobody knocked it down. It ceased to exist
knocked down.
decades ago.
It's still there.
Yeah,
So
it's still there.
unfortunately, the
Right.
decision is not in the hands of Planning and Zoning Board. That ship
Right.
sailed when
That
SPRAB
building
approved
doesn't
it.
exist?
I don't believe that there were any legitimate reasons, like it's not on a registry, to prevent it from being destroyed. I think all of the city staff
Does the
in
building
development
still
services
exist?
would
The
echo the
building-
sentiment
the
that we
building
need to
exists,
preserve historic
but-
buildings, but
This is
That's my point.
plat. This is just a plat.
There's just
we can't do anything about it at this
There's a
point.
plat at this point, and
Well, I'm not
I just
voting
have to
for
tell
it.
you.
Okay,
that-
fine. You didn't win me over.
Mr. Bennett, you
I'm
want
not
to say
voting
anything?
for it.
Well,
And I'm appalled at losing the
It's not
1927
Mrs. Rodriguez.
building.
What is
yeah.
Ms. Rodriguez, I just want to state here, first of all, no member of this board should be attacking a member of city staff, especially not in that vitriolic manner. Excuse me, Mr. Brown, okay? Especially not in that type of vitriolic manner. What we're discussing here tonight is purely, and I will take a word that Mr. Bennett stuck in my head many years ago, this is a ministerial function we're performing here tonight. This is just approval of a plat. There isn't a project before us. There isn't anything else. And city staff, to be quite frank, is doing their best to look out for this city every day. If there were objections of the type you're making to this, I would just say they should have been voiced far in advance of this.
Well, and I want to use this as an opportunity because your purview is limited to the findings and elements that are before you. And when we deviate from those findings, and we do so passionately, which sometimes this board is prone to do, it makes it problematic if this board were to deny this application. Because there's going to be a record now that indicates that you're most upset, at least currently, about a structure that is not before the board and is not part of any project that's before the board. And if it were denied, I guarantee you Mr. Carney would use those statements to say that it was improperly denied because it wasn't based upon findings. So it's very important. If you want to express frustrations to staff, you're more than welcome to do that outside of your role as a judge in this room. Or if there's a way that they are tied to or linked to findings that the board needs to make, those can be expressed. But statements like what was just presented to staff would make it very difficult for my office to defend an action by this board if it were to deny this plat at this point. Especially since the plat is really just mirroring a project that's already been approved and the findings already been made by a different independent board.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Thank you.
I have a question.
Please, Ms. Morrison.
Your staff report says this site plan was approved back in 2018. It was approved showing that 2 of the entrances are on an alley?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know we allowed front doors to be on alleys in this city.
It's a new day.
That is one of these multiple alley-oriented projects that we have been needing to address through naming of alleys, which is subsequent on the agenda. I can't speak to the circumstances for when, why, what it was approved like that. I do know that the proliferation of these has opened up a discussion in the department if there are any circumstances in which we would feel that alley access is appropriate. Unfortunately for this one, because it's ministerial, the best way we have to proceed with the plat because the site plan was approved, but we've heard the boards and the commission loud and clear about determining on a case-by-case basis if it's appropriate at all to have any alley access. So that's sort of where we are, maybe in a not ideal for.
Now, do you mean any alley access? You're talking about like even
No, for a front door.
a garage?
Well, only access off of the alley. So like in the
Right.
CBD, we encourage it, for example, but there may be circumstances when it's not appropriate. But so staff is doing some cleanup now with some of these, and I think this may be the last one that you're going to be seeing. I'm not sure, because if there's a site plan that was approved some years ago, we may still find that there's another issue like this, but it's on our radar for any reviews, and we're going to be looking for a way to handle it in a way that's really best to preserve the form of the city.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Dassery.
I just want to voice that it's dangerous. I drove the alley today. It's 16 feet wide. My car, I have a normal size SUV. Made it down the alley, but I can't imagine an ambulance coming down that alley. I certainly can't imagine a fire truck coming down the alley. So I'm not quite sure how this got approved, first of all, in 2018, and then reapproved or whatever you do, whatever, to extend it.
That's just an
from
operation
that.
of statute. Yeah, as soon as there's an emergency order, it automatically extends approval. So we have no ability or control over that process.
And we do, in our technical process, the fire and PD reviews this. So again, now that we've been seeing these alley access developments that there are concerns about due to the alleyway width, we're going to make sure that that is a specific item that is addressed within review. If anyone is proposing it on an alley, these are the things that we're going to be talking about based on board concerns.
No, that's good, Ms. Dassery, because I think what Ms. Morrison brought up is valid, and it's something that emergency services, we can't look ahead in the rearview mirror at the same time, but going forward from here, I agree with Ms. Morrison 100%.
Make a motion? We can move this item along?
Please, let's
Thank
go.
you so much.
Ms. Blankenship?
Thank you. Approve the preliminary plat ACEA4 associated with the creation of 4 fee simple lots for the property currently addressed as 142 Northeast 7th Avenue, finding that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship. Motion by Ms. Blankenship, second.
Second.
Snyder, thank you. Second by Mr. Snyder. Ms. Miller, if you call the roll, please.
Julian Blankenship,
Yes.
Christina Morrison,
No.
Alan Zeller,
I support my colleagues' comments about the wholesale destruction of historic buildings. And I understand Mr. Bennett, he's lectured me a few times about my concern with issues that aren't before the board. So since you can't abstain, then I guess we're forced to vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller. Ms. Miller?
Gregory Snyder,
Yes.
Chris Brown,
No.
Joy Howell, absent, Chris Davy.
Yes. Let the record show that item passed 4-2. Mr. McAllister, Mr. Carney?
We have one more motion.
Sorry, I
Rec-
forgot. Thank you.
Recommend approval to the City Commission for the certification of the final plat for ASEA4 associated with the creation of 4 fee simple lots for the property currently addressed as 142 Northeast 7th Avenue, finding that the request is consistent with a comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Blankenship, second by Mr. Snyder. Ms. Miller, if you call the roll, please.
Julian Blankenship,
Yes.
Christina Morrison,
No.
Alan Zeller,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder,
Yes.
Chris Brown,
No.
Joy Howell, absent, Chris Davy.
Yes. Please let the record show that item also passed 4-2.
And our apologies to staff.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice night.
Apologies, Ms. Rodriguez, really. Onward and upward.
Okay, Grisel Rodriguez for the record, introducing item 2023-039, Master Development Plan Modification with Waivers.
Mr. Scott,
Come on down.
yes. Happy to be here.
Finally.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Scott. I'm a zoning attorney with the law firm of Dene Miskell and Backman with an address of 14 Southeast 4th Street, the city of Boca Raton. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, KP Del Rey LLC. This is a application for an amendment or modification to a master development plan known as Del Rey Commons. It is located at 5024 West Atlantic Avenue. So in general terms, it's on the southwest corner of Military Trail and Atlantic Avenue. Before calling up some of my colleagues, I want to introduce them. I have Andrew Savage, who's the project engineer, Greg Walden, who's project architect, and then from my client and Fifth Third Bank, who is part of this project, is Thomas Schwetz and James Campbell. Just to give some context, and then I'll turn it over to Andrew to just give some project highlights. This is a shopping center in the city of Delray Beach that was built maybe 55 or 60 years ago. And in our business, planning and zoning boards, land use and zoning attorneys, those create challenges for cities. They either get demolished completely and redeveloped, mixed use, new shopping centers, or they create redevelopment challenges of trying to figure out how to upgrade them because they frequently become very dilapidated. And so my client, over the past few years, has reinvested substantially in improving this shopping center. And so most recently, what you see there is a new Sprouts grocery store, which I go to frequently, and it's great. And then all new stores along the sides, new architecture, new landscaping, new paving and grading. And there's a new Taco Bell, a relatively new Taco Bell out parcel. And so we're here tonight seeking a master plan amendment that would help pave the way for sort of the last piece of this puzzle, which is an out parcel on the northwest corner of the shopping center to allow for a new Fifth Third Bank. So with that being said, I want to turn it over to Andrew Savage, and I'll go to the next slide. Here we go. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. Thank you, Matthew. My name is Andrew Savage with Bowler Engineering, project engineer, 1900 Northwest Corporate Boulevard, Boca Raton. I have been sworn in. And as Matthew mentioned, this is the Del Rey Commons shopping plaza at the corner of Military and Atlantic Ave. And I'm sure you can all remember how this site used to look before. It was very old, worn down, no landscaping, no life. I was lucky enough to be a part of the revamp project for the Sprouts, farmers market that was recently constructed there. I reside in the city of Delray Beach. My wife goes there all the time, similar to Matt. She loves it. So along with the Sprouts, we have also done an entire revamp to the shopping plaza itself, paving, new sidewalk accesses to the adjacent streets for ADA accessibility, obviously more landscaping. It really looks beautiful. This out parcel that Matthew mentioned is really the last piece of the puzzle to bring this master development plan to fruition. So my colleagues with BDG will show you momentarily some of the slides for this out parcel bank and how it meshes with the overall shopping plaza. So from a civil side of things, happy to answer any questions if you have them. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Can I interrupt you 1 second?
Yes.
I forgot to ask for ex parte from my colleagues.
Right.
I'm remiss.
Well, I'm a sprouter, so I'm at this center all the time. And thank you, Mr. Pebb, for bringing it up to where it is now, because it needed help. So thank you.
I think it's a center that is, I've never been to it except when I talked to Matt Scott, who's the applicant's attorney. So I went out to the site, and so it's a great shopping center.
I'm familiar with it. But.
I'm very familiar with it. It's near my home. I visited specifically to look at this. I talked to the attorney.
I visited the site, drove around the site.
I spoke to the applicant's attorney. I visit the site all the time. I got my oil changed at Jiffy Lube about 100 yards to the west. So that's all.
And
Ms.
Jiffy
Scott,
Lube, Jiffy
please.
Lube's my favorite, by the way, as well. I go to that Jiffy Lube. So then let me run. Thank you for doing that. We did forget to do that. So running through some of the improvements that are part of this overall plan. So as I said in my introduction, we, as part of the master plan amendment that we've been working through, there's enhanced landscaping features, enhanced site lighting, right, bringing that up to code, updating various non-compliant ADA areas, because a lot of old shopping centers don't have the ADA things, right? Improving the paved areas, sidewalks, correcting a lot of nonconformities. And so with that being said, as I said, this Fifth Third Bank proposal is sort of the last piece of the puzzle. Here is the site plan. The proposal is to replace just this maybe 15 or 16,000 foot sodded area. It's just a sort of a oddball piece of sod in the middle of the shopping center. We're proposing to replace that with a configuration that sort of matches the Taco Bell in layout. That will have parking, new landscaping, new trees, some improvements to that buffer in the front along Atlantic, and then a drive-through feature on the east side. And so very quickly, the existing conditions are on your left, the proposed conditions are on your right. And so this new building will add approximately 2,000 square feet to the overall master plan. The lot coverage, which I'm going to speak about in a moment, after we talk about the architecture, to talk about our waivers, is going to increase from 73 to 77%. That's above the maximum allowed per code at 75%. These open space, of course, is related to lot coverage, right? They're one each sides of a coin. So while open space now is 27%, it's going to go down to 22.8. Parking actually improves. We go from 301 to 313. And so with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Greg, our architect.
Thank you, Matthew. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Greg Walden. I'm with BDG Architects here for Fifth Third Bank. So the existing shopping center, we did get some preliminary staff comments concerning the grading of Delray and coming in with a straight prototype. So we took a look at the existing shopping center. These are the renderings of the improvements at the shopping center. You'll know a very, very light tone to the building, incorporation of dark bronze storefront, metal canopies, and murals prevalent throughout. Oops. Just more views of the existing shopping center. And then the adjacent out parcel, Taco Bell, so again, detached from the core of the shopping center, but has incorporated the murals, has incorporated the dark bronze on the storefront. Now, they did utilize the dark bronze as the canopy. That's one item to take note of, and then have utilized a cement board lap siding as well. This is the standard Fifth Third 1900 square or narrow prototype. And notice it's fairly clean, modern design, but in terms of the materiality, the main field of the building is a stucco finish with a brick water table, and no undulations beyond the focal point of the tower in terms of street facing and the perimeter of the building. And this is the rear corner view of the structure. So what we propose, if you see the bright red corner there, we are proposing, and Fifth Third is already engaged with a local muralist.
Can I just interrupt you here 1 second? Mr. Bennett.
What is the MDP? Isn't it a master development plan?
Yeah,
kind
let
of
me read.
situation?
Unless Rebecca can provide a little guidance. Well, this will still go to SPRAB for architectural elevations.
It would. So part of the findings for the MDP is that there has to be overall consistency with the architecture. And while both the site plan and the mural would be approved separately, it's not completely outside the scope of what the board has to decide in determining consistency to discuss what's planned with any potential mural, but with the clear specification that it's approved by another entity.
Right, okay. Thank you.
And I'm here, there was concern that if I wasn't here to at least address what the plans moving forward in the SPRAB, and then also with the approval process for the mural. So we wanted to make sure that y'all had a high level of the steps we're taking to be cohesive with the overall shopping center.
And murals now go before the Public Arts Advisory Board as well,
Right.
so that'd be another step along the way.
So that's the rendering of what you're proposing?
So the materiality at the corner, what we have introduced a ship slab siding over the entry. The red areas, the bump ups in the building, that will be, those are the focal points where the mural will be. And then actually it will be, I've seen some preliminary concepts from the muralist. They're actually going to tie those together through lighter line work with the main focal points of the mural being at the front, the south, the northeast corner and then the opposite corner.
Great.
Can I ask him a question?
No, because not the time.
Before I forget.
And we're trying to move along. You're not going to forget it. Write it down. Whisper it in Mr. Bennett's ear.
I didn't have many
Excuse me.
questions about this.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
And just to clarify why we had the architect here to talk about this briefly was staff did a really great detailed job, really they always do in Delray Beach, of going through everything. I think our staff report respectfully is glowing. The only concern that was raised was the board should look at architectural compatibility. So
Right.
that's the extent of this discussion. Is we wanted you to know that we spent time trying to make it compatible. And the other thing that I think is great, I hope my client doesn't hear this, is that if cities don't ask out parcel developers, commercial developers, national tenants to do a better job, they do the prototype. And so I can just say your staff did a great job of saying, hey, look, we would like to see something a little better, and so we worked on that. That's the extent of the architectural discussion. So with that being said, we have a few waivers we need to request. The reason why I started my presentation by saying this is a really old shopping center that creates some real challenges is to set the table for the waivers. Your code allows for waivers for situations like this, the need to deviate in small ways from code to accommodate unique site features or challenges with development. And so this is the last piece of an existing shopping center that my client has spent a lot of money and time reinvesting in. And so to allow for this last piece of the puzzle, we need a few waivers. The first are from the overall master development plan. They are relative to the lot coverage and the related open space. So we need to deviate in a small amount from the maximum lot coverage, from 75 to 77. We then need to, we're providing marginally less open space than is required for master development plans from 25 to 22.8. And then for the last waiver that's from the master development plan piece is perimeter buffers. So the code calls for 30 feet. The existing condition there is 9.5 feet. That's because the property was annexed in from the county. So there's a drive aisle in front to get to the Taco Bell. So if, for some unfortunate reason, we're not able to be approved, that drive aisle is not changing. It's an existing feature that we're trying to address with the master development plan amendment. It's an existing condition, and we can't cut off Taco Bell's access. So we're making that a continuous, orderly development configuration along the frontage. And then with regard to the last two waivers, we're seeking a waiver from the minimum structure size to allow for the building to be 1,820 square feet instead of 4,000. This is similar to what Taco Bell requested. Taco Bell got a waiver for virtually the same thing. And then lastly, perimeter buffers to allow for the east perimeter buffer, the interior landscape. So this is between the Taco Bell and this site, to be 5 feet where 10 feet is required. My understanding is Taco Bell got that waiver as well. I say that not because I'm trying to say, well, they got it, Daddy, you need to give it to us as well, which my kids say to me all the time. But rather, your waiver standards speak to this. They ask the question whether this is a special privilege only being granted to us. And so with that being said, I sort of want to wrap up with just a few notes about how we comply with the criteria for waivers and why we think you should approve this amendment to the master plan. So there are criteria for these waivers, right? They ask whether there's any adverse effect on neighbors. There is zero effect whatsoever on the neighbors here. This is simply a continued improvement to a shopping center that categorically benefits the neighbors, and this out parcel will help complete that improvement for the area. There's no negative effect on public facilities. As your staff report, you're going to hear in your staff report, there's no genuine issue with whether there's an issue of capacity or anything of that nature. And then there's no unsafe condition either. In fact, removing this sort of awkwardly shaped, awkward grass area and replacing it with new driveways, new parking, a new building improves vehicular movements, pedestrian access in the shopping center. And then going back to my point about no special privileges, right? I mentioned how Taco Bell got these. Taco Bell got them, I believe, because this is a really old shopping center. So if we're going to support it, we need to provide some relief. And so with that being said, we would respectfully request approval of this master plan amendment and the waivers. Thank you for allowing us to make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Great presentation. I forget who's up on this one, Ms. Rodriguez or Ms. Dassery?
Yes, sir. Rebecca's my
She's your slide person?
My wing person.
There you go. Full speed ahead.
I can't read this, so she needs to move that, and I can see it on my laptop.
I don't blame you.
So, okay, this is a master plan modification with waivers, and the address is 5024 5070. One is the major parcel, and the other one is the parcel with the bank. So those are their two addresses. The next slide. The location, as we see in the diagram, where tract 1 and tract 2 are, that's the whole shopping center, is those two pieces together. The land use designation is general commercial. The planned commercial district zoning with four corners overlays, which looks at GC zoning. There's 8.37 acres in total, and there's about 75,343 square feet of development on the parcel. Next slide, please. Next slide. It just describes the general commercial district. This is a bird's eye view of what they would like to do, what the applicant would do. The proposed bank goes in that corner. Just for the record, the history of this is that the entire tract 2 was one bank with a huge parking lot up until 2019. And then it was demolished so that redevelopment could occur on the parcel. And the first portion of redevelopment was Taco Bell, and the applicants coming in with this to finish the redevelopment of the shopping center. Yes, the shopping center was in the early 1980s. It came into the city in 1991, and it has been continually updated through the years. The last update was Sprouts and Taco Bell. The current request is to build a 1,820 square foot bank on tract 2. Next slide, please. This is the prototype for the rendering that we're showing you, because it doesn't include a mural or any, this is it. If nothing else happened on the site and the Class 5 site plan got approved, this would be pretty much it. The amendment is needed because the bank is less than 4,000 square feet. Adding the bank and the parking area tips the scale on open space and lot coverage, and that's what happened with adding this piece. And plus there are existing nonconformities from the plaza when it was annexed. And the Four Corners Overlay District, which were implemented in 2007, there's been no substantial redevelopment using that section of the code, but they are bound by the development standards in the Four Corners to do that, even though there's no multifamily housing or anything else there. Next slide, please. Put in site plan terms, the red square is where the proposed bank is going to go. Next slide, please. These are the waivers that we're talking about. The first one is the perimeter buffer, which is the 9.5 feet to accommodate, and the Taco Bell is 9.5 feet now, so that would be a continuous strip of landscaping, the same width across. The building size and the interior landscape buffer, which they had to bump out for the drive-throughs, and that's what created that request. The lot coverage and open space, we have a graphic that shows you what the lot coverage and open space of the center is at this point. Next slide, please. Numerically, these are the waivers that have already been discussed. They tip the scale for maximum lot coverage a little bit. They exceed by 2.17%. The minimum open space is a little under what the requirement is of 25. The landscape buffer on Atlantic, we already talked about, is 9.5 to match the Taco Bell strip that's already been developed. And the building size is under 4,000, and the buffer next to the drive-through is 5 feet. Next slide, please. The findings that you must make is that the property will be compatible and harmonious with adjacent and nearby properties. The table below shows you that the subject parcel is planned commercial. Delray Landing is what the plaza's been rechristened as instead of Delray Commons. The northern parcel is planned commercial. It's the marketplace of Delray. To the south, there's a multiple family density housing project, Gramercy Square. To the east, there's planned commercial, the Bed Bath & Beyond Plaza. And to the west, there's planned commercial and retail. Next slide, please. The considerations for you are the elevations harmonious and complementary? We've presented several elevations for you to get a bird's eye view. Does the proposed bank, which triggered the update to the MDP, add value for the city and the property owners? And just to remind the board that there was a bank on this site before, and this adds a banking features back. Next slide, please. The required findings are for land use and concurrency in 3.1.1. The existing GC land use and PC zoning are compatible. It's below, it does not exceed the FAR, it's 0.211, 3.0 is max. The concurrency is the proposed bank generates less than 20 peak hour trips according to the traffic performance standards report. The water and sewer, there is sufficient capacity on the site. The system on site will meet the capacity per the review, and solid waste has disposal capacity to accommodate the bank. Next slide, please. The required findings for consistency with the comprehensive plan is that the property is redeveloped to accommodate the use and intensity of the site, the complementary and compatible uses and services, and they enhance the quality of life with redevelopment for the needs of the neighborhood in the area. Next slide, please. So these are the requested waivers that have already been mentioned. Next slide, please. The waivers are LDR section 2.4.6 F6C, variances and waivers of base standards referred to herein may be granted by the Planning and Zoning Board. The waiver findings that must be made is that it shall not adversely affect the neighboring area, shall not significantly diminish the provision of public facilities, shall not create an unsafe situation, and does not result in a grant of special privilege. None of those things that are mentioned here, it enhances the area. It doesn't diminish public facilities because they're still intact. There's no diminishment. They do not create an unsafe situation. The bank will go through a SEPTED review for the site plan, and it does not result in a grant of special privilege. It is an old shopping center, and they're asking for minor changes to be able to fully redevelop the parcel. So considerations, does the MDP, well, I've just gone through this slide. These are the considerations that you have. These are our conclusions, our recommendations. Whether the proposed front, interior, and side setback and open space and lot coverage are necessary to allow for a reasonable site layout. The shopping center was built in the 80s and annexed in 1991, and it just added more nonconformities with the Four Corner District. So it's a tight spot with a difficult set of code provisions. So it's trying to fit in. Whether the waiver to build a 1,820 square foot bank is reasonable to meet the intent. A smaller bank gives more opportunity to meet open space requirements than the large bank that was there before, and reduces the lot coverage for the overall site. So that was a balance. Next slide, please. Options for the board. This is a package deal. It's all the waivers are going to be approved, denied, or moved forward with recommendations, other recommendations for approval. So those are the motions that you have. Approve as amended, this last one.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Thank you so much. I'll now, just because I have to go through this formality, ask, is there any member of the public who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing no one rising, we can close public comment, and I can now turn to you, Ms. Scott, and ask you, do you have any cross-examination or rebuttal for Ms. Dossry or Ms. Rodriguez?
No, the only, I guess, closing comment or rebuttal I have is, because I think it's pertinent, is that if approved, this would be the first Fifth Third bank in the city. That's relevant because you're looking at with a shopping center whether it is a neighborhood serving uses, whether there's a need for it in the area. And so I just wanted to close with that.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I'll ask you, Ms. Rodriguez. Ms. Dossry, do you have any cross-examination, rebuttal, or questions for the applicant? None. Great. Seeing that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues. Anybody want to start?
I can.
I have a couple of questions.
You go.
We'll start on the right.
Okay.
You'll say.
I don't really have a problem with the 3, 4, and 5 waivers. Most of them are existing conditions. But you're exacerbating the open space and reducing the lot coverage. Oh, is it? It is on. I'll get closer. So you're exacerbating the existing conditions, which are already non-conforming, not by a lot, but it seems to me that there should be some way that you could improve the lot coverage to get back to the ordinance requirements and the open space. It's not a lot. You apparently have found 8 new parking spaces to add to the site that can be turned into green space and remedy those 2 issues.
Mr. Zeller, just to interrupt you, currently we meet open space and we meet the requirements for open space and lot coverage. So it's this application that's causing us to no longer meet that, just to clarify.
Well, you're making the condition worse. You're
correct.
Yeah, and I'm
saying...
saying...
I'm sorry, you said that we don't currently meet prior to this application, so I wanted to clarify. That's all.
Whatever. You're making those conditions worse, and it seems to me that you should be trying to accommodate the requirements when you're redoing the shopping center. You need open space. You need appropriate lot coverage that's not all pavement. I was out there. The place is sort of a hodgepodge of drive-throughs and conflicts with the different drive aisles that are existing, and maybe they were approved 30, 40 years ago, but you could drive through in front of that Taco Bell as the people pull out of the drive-through aisle, which is not very far from where the drive-through, from where the front aisle goes. To me, I'm not saying you need to change that condition, because you probably can't, but you can find additional places to plant some trees and buffers and whatever to accommodate the lot coverage and the reductions in lot coverage and open space. Plus, there's a bank a block away that's vacant, and I believe your office came in and got some approvals from us a few years ago that's just sitting there, so that can be.
Well, if I may respond.
That's immaterial.
It is immaterial. It is immaterial. As is what my initial question was going to be about the that building and the architecture, which is immaterial, but you really shouldn't make the back of that building look like a back of the building, because it's the front of the rest of the shopping center. So,
Well, that isn't within our purview, so to speak, Mr. Zeller, either, okay?
So what
This is going to go before SPRAB.
Right.
And it's going to go before the Public Art Board, as Mr. Bennett just told us.
It may
So-
come before us if they pass that new ordinance.
Well,
we'll cross that bridge when we come to
So
it.
I understand the concern about the open space. It's the biggest challenge here, right? I think it's fair that you pointed it out. Having said that, open space is only one part of the landscaping puzzle. So yes, currently we meet that with a non-native grass that sits on a big square box and does nothing at all for the shopping center. And this proposal allows for us to increase the tree plantings, 22 to 30 new trees on site, and then 700 give or take new shrubs. And so while the overall open space we are under, I will say from my perspective it's a marginal deviation, not a major one. It's, what is it, 1.5 to 2.5%, something in that range. But this project is allowing for new trees, removal of dead or dying trees. And so that has a net benefit that I think needs to be taken into consideration if the concern is pervious space and landscaping concerns.
Yeah, see, we look at it a little differently. I mean, the applicant, regardless of whether it wants to use this out parcel to build the bank or not, could improve the shopping center by adding the plantings and adding the new trees. It doesn't need to have this to make those improvements to dress up an old shopping center. But that isn't my point. What my point is that you should try and find a way not to further worsen the lot coverage and the open space condition just because you want to add a new building. You can add a new building and try and find a way to still meet those requirements, because you did do a lot of improvements to that shopping center. I mean, the back part looks nice, even the Taco Bell with their murals and whatever. It's sort of like an upscale Taco Bell. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller.
Yeah.
Mr. Snyder.
As I said earlier, he's going to say what I want to say, but my tone's a little different. I understand the problems with this. I did keep running the numbers and try and figure out how you can dig up the parking lot and add some green space. And
Wow.
and you're gonna end up well below the required number of parking spaces if you do that. I mean, it's just there's trade-offs, as you said. And while, yeah, my concern is exactly that. We don't need to be putting down more concrete and getting rid of green space. I mean, anywhere. And I'm not happy that it goes down to 23%. And one of the things on the slide, it says, does the waiver adversely affect the neighboring area? Well, yeah. if you take away green space, you can say that it does adversely affect it. But having said all that, overall, I just think that there's no reason to deny this based on that.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder.
I'll
Ms.
just be
Blankenship?
very brief and just say that I'm in support of the project. I think that what you've done to the overall shopping center is great. I drove by it quite frequently, and I'm always happy to see it. And I think that it should be noted that the grass that is part of that open space was once a bank, was demolished. That's why the grass is not even there. So we're just kind of putting it back, but I'm in support, and I just appreciate you beautifying that area of the city that's often overlooked.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship. Mr. Brown and Ms. Morrison?
I think it's a reasonable request, and I think it's also having a bank in that location is really helpful.
Ms. Morrison?
As Mr. Scott and his company knows, I'm not usually in favor of any waivers other than buildings that are smaller, and for more landscaping rather than less. But this center was so bad, and it's so much nicer now. And staff didn't even go into all the improvements that PEB has done to this center. All the facades are done. The back of the buildings were refinished and repainted. All the blacktop's been redone. I think these waivers are actually worth it, so I'm in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Let me say that I concur with Ms. Morrison. When I look at this site, I actually was shocked this evening when I read that it was built in the early 80s. I would have bet that it was at least a decade earlier. My mother likes to tell me, and so does my aunt, that from 2008 to 2022, she never went into that shopping center. And now she goes there all the time. And, I got to be blunt with you. Your floor area ratio is less than 1/10 of what it could be on that site. You have a tremendous amount of surface parking there, which I think is wonderful. The fact that Fifth Third Bank wants to go in there, essentially they're next to a Firestone, I think is a big help for the area. And I just think that an eclectic architectural mix, I like the architecture. And I also just want to turn to my colleagues and say that this whole area, the Four Corners, if we go back and look at the stuff that we have made concessions on in order to reconfigure the the shopping center that is diagonally across Atlantic and Military, where the Publix, Hobby Lobby is going in, Chick-fil-A has gone in. We had Avis Rent-A-Car here. We cut them a break. We had Hobby Lobby. We worked with them to make sure they'd come in. We worked with the Publix to make sure they'd get the drive-through on the pharmacy. When we go across the street to the Best Buy Plaza, within the past year or two, we had the Starbucks in here, which was another sub 4,000 square foot outbuilding. That when you look at this geographic area, the next one to go is going to be the Winn-Dixie Ross Shopping Plaza. I think everybody here could sit here and look at this. And for the applicant to come in here and ask to move the open space requirement from 75 to 77 and a half or something like that, to me is a minimal concession when I look at that plaza and look at it and how much it's improved and how much more traffic and how much more of a community benefit it is now. So let me just state I'm absolutely in favor of it, and I think this is an example of the board and the city working properly with an applicant to see that something that was an eyesore was put back in Class A condition, really. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, with that, I'm ready for a motion, as I lose my voice.
Do we have to read each waiver?
No.
Okay, then I'm happy to make a motion. Because I'm like, wait.
Let me ask you. How about a board rule where the board attorney reads the motions for us?
Kind of like Attorney
The
Jelen
ordinance
does.
titles, yes. The only recommendation I would make, if you want to say with the 5 waivers as presented in the staff report or as presented with the application, but I think it's unnecessary.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Bennett.
Mr. Bennett. Move to approve the amendment to the Delray Landing Master Development Plan modification with 5 waivers as presented in the staff report, finding that the approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
It says motions continued on the next slide.
Oh, I don't know. I'm reading from the staff report.
No, but
Oh,
yeah, that's just the next
okay,
motion.
got it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
motions.
I wanted to make sure
okay.
nothing was missed. Great. Motion by Ms. Blankenship, second by Ms. Morrison. Thank you. Ms. Miller, please call the roll.
Julian Blankenship.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes.
Alan Zeller.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Joy Howell absent. Chris Davy.
Yes, let the record show the item passed by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, Ms.
Appreciate it.
Thank you again. Keep bringing sprouts.
Oh, that's it. By the
No,
way,
we-
Mr. Scott,
No, we have one more.
No, we have one
my
more.
apologies for pushing you to the end of the.
Ah, that's all right.
Sorry.
We
Okay.
were happy to watch.
Thank you.
We have one more.
The
One
legislative
more, the
body.
alley. Sorry. Spoke too soon.
Wishful thinking. Okay, I'll be right here.
For the record, Rebecca Dossery reading into the record. I'll not turn on my microphone. Rebecca Dossery, for the record, reading into the record file number 2023-259. So this is a request to name an alley that runs south of Northeast 6th Street and north of Northeast 1st Street between Northeast 6th and Northeast 7th Avenue. We're requesting that it be named Hoffman Lane. Per the LDR's, PZB is supposed to make a recommendation to the commission on this. So we haven't engaged on a giant project to name all the alleys in the city. This is related to the plat that you previously heard. There are 2 of the properties on the approved site plan and now on the plat which have their only access off of the alley, and we can't name or we can't address something to an unnamed alley. So that's the genesis for this request, and because it stretches for all of these blocks, we are handling it as a city-initiated request. The alley itself was created mostly, well, the first part of the alley was created in 1896 and the rest in 1913 through 4 different plats. We were suggesting the name Hoffman Lane because after Adolf Hoffman, one of the early founders of Delray, he helped start Trinity Lutheran. He was influential in starting a bank, and he was involved in the creation of multiple neighborhoods within the city, and all in that location generally close to the alley. The city does support the maintenance of the alley network to be used for multiple purposes. And again, per our street naming manual, we have to have the property addressed off of the street where the front door faces. And as we talked about earlier, related to the orientation of the lots, again, this development services is trying to come up with some standards for how we would look at this in the future, but for the purposes of making or meeting public safety standards for this property and this approved site plan and the plat, we do need to name this in order to have some something that our emergency responders could find. The alley is platted as 16 feet long. Let me go back to the image of it. Sorry, yes, thank you. 16 feet wide. The portion that's immediately adjacent to the 142 Northeast 7th Street townhomes, or 7th Avenue, that is 20 feet by way of an easement that has been recorded on the property to the west. We typically would do an actual right-of-way dedication, but that was approved many years ago before the city was very diligent in requesting rights of way, but there is 20 feet available on the alley in that portion adjacent to the development. So that brings you to your options for action, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We don't need ex parte on this.
It's
right?
legislative, so no
And
ex parte,
city
no public
initiated.
comment, yep.
Yeah, city initiated. I mean, do any of my colleagues have any questions on this?
I don't have a question. Can I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
I appreciate two things. One is the fact that it's 20 feet wide next to that parcel, which, when I drove it, that access as far as that plat that we approved should be really adequate for emergency vehicles, although they're going to have to back out. Once you pass that place, as Ms. Morrison said, it's hard to get your car through. But I really want to commend staff for taking a look at not approving properties that face onto alleys. I was going to bring that up, but it was brought up already earlier, and so my congratulations to you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Anybody else?
I have a question, though.
Please.
So is that alley the whole way going to be improved or widened or whatever?
The majority of the alley is improved, and I apologize for that error in the staff report, so thank you for bringing that up. The portion of the block between 6th and 5th Street, that is not improved, and there currently aren't any plans within the city alley improvement plan to pave that, but everything south of 5th Street is currently improved. Not to the 20-foot width for the remainder of the alley. Dedications would be obtained as the alley would develop. If it does, the city's practice has been to take the dedication from the mixed use or commercial districts when there is a commercial and residential district abutting. So it would be anything that develops to the west of the alley is where the dedication would be taken from. But that segment there is 20, the rest is 16, and paved.
When I went down the alley north of 2nd, it's really not very wide at all, and it doesn't even look like you should be able to drive down that alley, but there are a lot of garages there. So
that's Renaissance.
I just want to know when we're going to have, since Rebecca has brought so many of these, a Dossery lane, because, you put so much time and effort into this. I mean,
we do have the plan to really
Dossery Drive?
Sure.
Hey,
there you go.
Not a drive. She deserves a wide street, not a little alley. Come on.
Let me tell you, honestly, I'd say the P&Z director, but the name's a little long for a sign.
why don't you name it like Wall Street or something? I mean,
It's not a street. It's 16 feet. It's not a street. It's not a
I'm
lane.
what about a lane?
It's a way.
A lane.
It's a way. It's not a lane. It's not.
No,
it's not even one lane.
I lived in the
It's a
country.
joke. It's a joke, and that's why I should
It's
name
a way.
it Wall Street. So
Well,
wait, the other alleys we've named have been lanes recently.
And I don't know why, because
they're lanes, like a country lane. It's
How
a
about
subsidiary
memory
street.
lane?
It's a way. At the best, it's a way.
One of the applicants for Kenmont, they did not want it to be named Alley. They had concerns with it.
I don't blame them.
And so
Wait a minute. They didn't want to name it? I'm sorry. It's a horrible joke. Nobody wanted to live on Adolph Alley?
Sorry, for the Kenmont Lane one that the board reviewed a few months ago, they requested lane instead of alley. So if it's maybe a little longer length
Certain
of it, we've been
names
trying to
might
go
kill
with them.
real estate sales on that block. So this is really, I would look for a motion from my colleagues at this point.
It's not a lane. It's a way.
Who would like to offer it?
I'll read this thing.
Please,
I think.
thank you, Mr.
I'll
Thank
try.
you.
Okay. Recommend approval to the City Commission on Resolution Number 185-23 to designate the unnamed improved public alley right-of-way located south of Northeast 6th Street and north of Northeast 1st Street, east of Northeast 6th Avenue, and west of Northeast 7th Avenue as Hoffman Lane, finding that the request meets the applicable criteria in the land development regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Second?
Second?
Mr. Zeller?
calling on me to vote?
Calling on you to, you want to second it?
Julian seconded.
I seconded it.
You seconded it?
Yeah,
Ms.
let's-
Blankenship, that's fine. Second by Ms. Blankenship. Ms. Miller, if you could please call the roll.
Julian Blankenship.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
No, it's away. It's not
Ellen
away.
Zeller.
Since it makes no difference, I'll vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Joy Howell absent. Chris Davy.
Yes. Please let the record show that item passed 6-0. It was a 5-1. Thank you. Ms. Dassery?
That does it for us. Our
Ms.
next-
Rodriguez? Comments? Staff comments? Hey.
Well, only that our next meetings are October 16th and November 13th. The November 13th is the alternative date, thanks to Thanksgiving.
Okay. So for the foreseeable future, we're going to keep meeting as a board. There wasn't going to be that merger or anything else like that.
No, but we are bringing, second reading is anticipated for the Chapter 2 update for October 17th. So after that, I think that the commission was going to handle the reappointments to be effective, or to be concurrent with the effective date of the Chapter 2 update.
Perfect.
How, can I ask when the Atlantic Avenue Historic District might be considered?
They're in the process of scheduling a symposium, they're calling it, to bring in different experts on historic preservation to talk about what historic designation could mean and the benefits of it. And then after that, after there's a little more public outreach, is when it would be brought back to the commission for consideration.
Great. Mr. Bennett?
And Mr. Brown, I truly hope you don't feel like I'm singling you out or picking on you, because I'm really not. And I've had this across my boards, but it did present an opportunity to really highlight the importance of the discussions and the words that are used by board members, just generally speaking. The staff report is specifically drafted to address the elements that the board has to find. And personally, I would have advised staff to remove any information that was outside the scope of the application or the elements, because it just creates the opportunity for someone who is unhappy about the decision, whether it's an applicant who was denied or a member of the public that is upset with an approval, to bring forth deficiencies in the way the board handled its discussion. And it doesn't take much. I've had unfortunately more than one lawsuit where I've had to defend actions by boards, and it can be as simple as just, I agree with the public comment. Well, unfortunately, that means you've now agreed with all the public comment, even if you didn't necessarily agree with it, or it was even discriminatory, or had issues that were outside the scope of the application and the elements. So it helps, obviously, our office a lot if the conversation really centers around the elements as they're listed in the staff report, the land development regulations, and the items that are before you. And you'll hear me constantly, especially with this board, remind you, has nothing to do with the beautiful project that they are telling you about that they want to build, because the project's just not before you. And somebody could argue that if you've adopted the project or said, I think this is a great project, so I'm going to approve rezoning, well, that's not the rezoning criteria. And so someone could argue that you relied upon something outside of the elements to support that. And that's a big reason why we're here. I try to help you guys navigate or clarify, tie what you're telling into the elements, because you all have a lot of information and passion and knowledge, part of the reason why you're on this board, and we thank you for volunteering and doing this service. But just be cognizant sometimes that, if we're directing conversation, or if I'm trying to assist or staff are trying to assist, what we're really doing is protecting this board and its decisions, so that no matter what happens, it will stand up at the end of the day. So, I appreciate the passion. I'm sure Mr. Zeller and I have had frustrating interchanges at times. But, it all comes from a good place, and we appreciate your service. And, just remember that we here, the staff, are on your side too. We're all the city while we're up here, and we appreciate your service and look forward to continuing to help you guys in the best way possible.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Really, great statement. Thank you. That's it. So,
I have one thing to say.
please, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize, Ms. Rodriguez and Rebecca, for my outburst about defending historic preservation. I'm shocked at the site plan approval, and my colleague reminded me that was a 2018 decision. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. But I want to tell Mr. Bennett one thing. Mr. Bennett, principle is very important. And the principle here was historic preservation is part of the history and the character and the charm of the city. And we can tear down every historic house in this city, including Old School Square, and make lots of money. But that's not a principle. That's a different item. So principle sometimes, and if you read the history books, principle sometimes is more important than protocol. But I apologize to Ms. Rodriguez and to Ms. Desiree for my outburst. I want to say one thing. I've been involved with a lot of historic preservation in this town. As the CRA director here, I remodeled the Spady House. We saved that house. I moved a house out of the West Settlers District next door to the Spady House, waiting for the next renovation. And then Dave Harden and I CRA bought 2 and Dave Harden bought 1 houses from the Palm Beach County Airport. We put them on a barge and we floated them down the Intercoastal and remodeled them. And you can see 2 of the houses over here, the CRA's in one of them. And last year, they brought in another house. Preservation makes this town. And Mr. Zeller, I want to say one thing to you, and I was hoping you would say it. 10 units at that particular location that we're going to lose is better keeping than having 4 multi-million-dollar townhouses. I was hoping you would say that.
I thought about saying that because
You
I
thought
fully
of it, I
agree.
know.
I fully agree with you.
Unfortunately, that decision was made pre-COVID, well pre-COVID. And that's,
It was
whatever. I
2018,
mean,
my God.
those other decisions are coming right down the road because that whole street there's a bunch of historic houses on that street.
Yeah.
I think the more we go down this discussion, we don't need to have it on the record. So what I'd say is that I think we're best off adjourning the meeting and carrying on this discussion.
Let me say one
outside.
thing. One day I'd like this board to have a discussion about historic preservation and do we want to make recommendations to the planning department and the city commission about putting strength in saving historic houses and homes.
Well, we did vote to adopt the Atlantic Avenue Historic Overlay Zone. This board made that recommendation to council. They're sitting on it, which is not a surprise, but to the commissioners.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.